Chapter 588. What should they do? Gu Fei couldn't answer this question, so he mercilessly kicked the question back to Glue and the others. Of course, he meant that if they showed a good attitude, he might consider letting them go. But now, everyone understood why Gu Fei kept pestering them. This was the legendary roar when one saw injustice on the road. It was just that Gu Fei's voice was unexpectedly full of energy. After roaring for so long, he still wanted to roar. This made Jian Yu and the others very uncomfortable. Obviously, unless Jian Yu and the others stopped doing such things, they would continue to hear Gu Fei's roar. In that case, there's nothing to talk about. Glue was helpless. They really wanted to negotiate with Gu Fei, but Gu Fei's demands were too high. He wanted them to give up their careers. How stubborn, said Gu Fei. He knew that these guys wouldn't give up so easily. After all, this was just a game. In reality, they wouldn't give up? Their legs would be broken. Let's see if they were still stubborn. Gu Fei thought about it cruelly. The negotiation broke down, but Gu Fei wasn't anxious at all. Instead, he was interested in what the three of them were going to do next. The three of them murmured and glared at Gu Fei. We can't mess with him. We'll hide. After saying that, the three of them did not get up and went offline without any hesitation. Hee hee. Gu Fei smiled and went offline. Half an hour later, 3 white lights flashed in the archer shooting range. Glue, Firecloak, and Lin Sensen returned to the game. The first thing he did when he logged on was scan his surroundings. He did not see Gu Fei anywhere. As soon as you logged off, Qianli left drunk. Jian Yu messaged Glue. Glue heaved a sigh of relief and smiled at the other two. He's gone. Flaming Cloak relaxed and cursed, that bastard. Silver Moon is still here. Glue glanced at her friends list and said, let's continue. Flaming Clothes took out his poker cards. Gu Fei had burned 4 of them, so he had to check which 4 were missing before he could make up for it. Flaming Clothes mumbled as he counted the cards. Speaking of which, didn't Silver Moon and Qianli have a grudge? Actually, if we tell him that we are preparing to ambush Silver Moon, he might not cause us any trouble this time. Fire-searing Robe didn't get a response from her companions. She looked up and saw the 2 of them staring at Fire-searing Robe with petrified expressions. No wait. Horini slowly turned around and saw Gu Fei's face, which he hated the most, less than half a meter away from him. The missing cards are 4, 8, 9 and Q, Gu Fei told him. Fuck, why are you here again? Horini screamed. I went offline for supper, took a shower, and then returned to the game. I didn't expect you guys to be here again, Gu Fei said. The 3 of them were so depressed that they wanted to die. So you are planning to ambush Silver Moon? Fire-searing Robe didn't know that when Gu Fei came online, so Gu Fei heard everything he said. I don't understand. Silver Moon deserves to die, but isn't he the one who hired you to get his staff? Gu Fei asked. The 3 of them burst into tears. Why did they suddenly turn around and attack Silver Moon? To put it bluntly, wasn't it because Gu Fei was constantly causing trouble for them, causing them to have no place to vent their anger? But now, it was Gu Fei who asked them this question. How were they supposed to answer him? Should they tell Gu Fei that they needed to vent their anger on Silver Moon because they were bullied by him? Obviously, they couldn't tell Gu Fei that. For example, Fire-searing Robe was afraid of Gu Fei in private, but in front of Gu Fei, he had to pretend to be fierce. Gu Fei looked at the 3 of them, hoping that they could give him an answer. The 3 of them clenched their teeth and refused to tell Gu Fei the reason. Water-breaking Arrow and the others should be with Silver Moon right now. If you want to deal with Silver Moon, aren't you going to make them your enemies too? Didn't they help you a few days ago? Why is your relationship so messy? Gu Fei was really confused at this time. That day, when he was about to kill Jian Yu, Water-breaking Arrow suddenly appeared and covered Jian Yu's escape. Gu Fei had always thought that Silver Moon, Water-breaking Arrow, and Jian Yu were on the same side, but now it seemed like that wasn't the case. Messy to mess. He's with Silver Moon? Didn't they say? Fire-searing Robe suddenly shut his mouth after saying these few words. Didn't they say what? Gu Fei asked. No one paid attention to Gu Fei. Glue immediately contacted another group to continue talking. There was a huge mistake in their plan to ambush Silver Moon. At the beginning, Glue's plan was to give up on the quest and meet up with Silver Moon. Because Silver Moon had secretly hooked up with them, they were sure that he would come alone. But after seeing Jianan Yu's persistence, they couldn't bear to let him go, so they changed their plan to wait for him. In the end, this had messed up both plans. Based on the current situation, there was no guarantee that Silver Moon would come alone. If the four of them came together, they obviously wouldn't be able to set up an ambush in a group of 3. If that's the case, we can only find out where Silver Moon went offline and wait for him to come online. Glue said, "That's the only way." Inagami of the other 3 replied, "Leave one person to guard that side." Glue said, "Okay, tell Lin Mu to guard your side. You and Searing Robe hurry up and level up." "We can't get out?" Glue said helplessly. "What's wrong? Qianli is still here. Didn't he go offline? He's back up again. Fuck, how despicable." Inagami felt depressed for Glue and the others. "Alright, you don't need to worry about us. You guys go settle your side." Glue said. "What's going on with you guys?" Gu Fei asked. The 3 of them still didn't answer. Gu Fei was at a loss, which made the 3 of them feel extremely satisfied. Not saying. Gu Fei asked again. The 3 of them laughed, but didn't say anything. "Alright, no matter what, taking care of Silver Moon is a very meaningful matter. I won't disturb you guys anymore." After Gu Fei said this, he actually turned and left the safe zone. The 3 of them were very surprised. They practically followed his butt to the door. The 3 of them didn't dare take half a step out of the door. They just watched as Gu Fei waved at them and disappeared into the streets. "What's this guy up to?" The 3 of them looked at each other and told the other brothers. Everyone was at a loss. What's this guy up to? At this moment, Gu Fei was also at a loss. He couldn't understand the relationship between Hongchen Yixiao, Silver Moon, and Jianan Yu. Where? Gu Fei suddenly sent a message to Hongchen Yixiao. Yi Xiaowu's internal injury. He really couldn't adapt to Gu Fei's unrestrained straightforwardness. Didn't this guy realize that they were enemies now? Could he not use such a casual tone to talk? Yi Xiaowu himself had the qualities of an enemy. He completely ignored Gu Fei's message. No one was willing to pay attention to Gu Fei. Gu Fei felt that this group of people was really boring. "Hero, why are you still here?" Gu Fei's previous offline behavior was his usual behavior. However, after more than half an hour, he came back online again. This was something that had never happened before. A few old acquaintances of the child elite group couldn't help but be curious. Brother Yu, the intelligence freak, had already anxiously started interviewing him. "I'm on vacation." Gu Fei's words were concise and comprehensive. "Oh." Everyone understood. "What are you doing now?" Everyone was very curious about what this guy would do when he had a lot of time. If he also leveled overnight, the name of the 5 rookies would really have to be forcefully updated. Up until now, ever since the name of the 5 rookies appeared in the gaming circle, their position had been extremely stable. The replacement only happened after someone lost a level. There had never been a situation where one of the 5 rookies was pushed out through experience. In the end, Gu Fei's answer naturally caused the 5 to silently curse. He had amazing skills and crazy equipment. Why couldn't he do something more meaningful? Why did he have to tangle with those little bandits? These experts naturally had the mentality of the elite players that Jianan understood very well. They would roar when they saw injustice. They could do it once or twice, but they definitely wouldn't do it professionally and every day. Everyone was here to play the game, not to play Jianan. However, Gu Fei made it hard for everyone to understand whether they were here to play the game or to play with him. After playing the game for so long, how many in-game quests had he done? Could he list out all the skills of each class? Did he understand the conversion formulas of the various damage and defense in the game? Did he know that we actually despise him? The online elite representatives discussed intensely in the chat. They didn't care that their all-rounders were seen by Gu Fei. Ahem! Gu Fei coughed to prove his existence. "Hero, Jianan and the others are about to be paralyzed by you. What do you want?" Even Brother Yu and the others began to think about this problem for Gu Fei. Will anyone care if we report them? Gu Fei also hoped for a proper solution. He didn't want to waste time with these guys all day. Half of the 7 players weren't even level 40. Seeing that he was fierce on the surface, but when he really started fighting, their legs would go soft. There was no fun in PvP with them. Gu Fei was now simply paying the price for his own morals. Who the hell cares? Brother, you got angry when he mentioned this. Even people from the company ran into the game and reported it. They said that they were going to investigate, but there's still no reply. You mean Hongchen Yixiao? Gu Fei asked. Yeah. This guy said that he wanted to deal with me. Why didn't he do anything? I sent him a message, but he didn't reply. Gu Fei also criticized. The 5 were speechless. They thought to themselves, how cheap are you? This guy is really hopeless. Brother Yu sighed to the other 4 beside him. Due to the fact that they were in a foreign land, coupled with the fact that they had been repeatedly schemed against by Yi Xiao's group, the 5 members of Gongzi's elite party were currently gathered together to level up. They could have easily resolved their previous discussions verbally, but they did it in the channel for Gu Fei to see. As traditional players, they couldn't stand Gu Fei's new and unconventional playstyle. With his skills and equipment, even if he's a few levels lower than normal players, it doesn't matter. Han Family Young Master said. Then why are we talking so much nonsense? Brother Yu was at a loss. Are you stupid? If he could come with us, how much more efficient would our leveling be? Look at that trash. Fuck, he's lost again. Han Family Young Master pointed at Yu Tian Shenming. He had just chased after a monster and ran a little too far. He couldn't tell north from south and ran in the opposite direction of the team. Brother Yu wiped his sweat. This guy just wanted to lure Gu Fei over to do hard labor. He really shouldn't have thought of him as being so pure. But if Gu Fei really was here, Brother Yu felt excited after imagining it. For a moment, he felt that Sword Demon and the others weren't good enough. Comparing oneself to others was really infuriating. After leaving the archer shooting range, Gu Fei actually didn't really want to leave. He still wanted to stay, but he insisted on squatting in front of Glue and the others. This kind of compliance was a little silly. Only by staying in the dark could he see the situation clearly. After leaving the resurrection point, Gu Fei bought some snacks from a chef player on the nearest trade street. He also went to the tavern to buy some alcohol as a drink. After walking around the archer shooting range, he chose a good place and settled down to eat, drink, and read books. From time to time, he glanced over there for any movements. Gu Fei didn't treat himself badly. Around 2 in the morning, nothing happened. Suddenly he received an unexpected message. Teacher, you're still here? Gu Fei was shocked. He quickly looked at the name. It was actually his group of students. It wasn't easy for these guys to have winter vacation. Naturally, they were even wilder than Gu Fei. Gu Fei pulled out his friends list and entered the student group. There were 24 people, and now 20 of them were lit up. Gu Fei wiped his face. Before he could reply, another message came. Teacher, open up the friend list. Gu Fei replied with as he opened up his friend list. In an instant he received 6 system notifications. 6 people had added Gu Fei as a friend, and then started chattering about who they were and who they were. Gu Fei was a physical education teacher. He didn't know all the students. None of the names were familiar. He added these 6 people and threw them into the student group. At the same time, he looked at the information of these 6 new people. Some of them weren't even level 10. They must have joined the game to cater to the winter vacation. Of course, there would be exams before the winter vacation. In order to prepare for the exams, these students hadn't come online for a while. After accumulating for a long time, they were very enthusiastic. All 20 people privately messaged Gu Fei. Gu Fei was on the verge of breaking down. Where are you, teacher? I haven't seen you in a long time. Teacher, we just entered the game. Come and teach us. Teacher, I heard you're a super expert. Come and show us. Teacher, I saw your Night Streak sword on the forum. It's so awesome. Teacher, I heard you're in Whitestone City. We're planning to come over too. Finally, Gu Fei saw this message. It was from Fei, that bastard who sold him out. How did you guys know? With so many messages, he couldn't answer all of them. Gu Fei could only choose a few to reply. I saw it on the forum. Teacher, why did you sell such good equipment? Fa gossiped. Chapter 589. He could no longer focus on his books, his beer bottles toppled over, and his food spilled all over the floor. The students were full of vigor and vitality, and Gu Fei found it hard to resist. Compared to these children, Gu Fei felt that he was already like an old man. Teacher, teacher, teacher. The questions continued, and Gu Fei did not even have a single shout in the public channel. Crazy, he's really going crazy. Everyone, speak up one by one. Gu Fei sent this message 80 times, and all the students were willing to take him as the one, and continued to ask questions. Other than going offline, Gu Fei could not think of any other way to get rid of this. He hurriedly packed his stuff and ran to the safe zone. In the safe zone, although Glue and the other two had seen Gu Fei leave, they did not let their guard down. Flaming Jacket, on the other hand, had the experience of unknowingly guiding a disaster twice, so he was very sensitive about this matter. In the end, the three of them did not leave the resurrection point and continued playing landlord. In the end, they saw Gu Fei running madly into the safe zone as if he was being chased. The three of them were shocked, and before they could say anything, Gu Fei casually nodded at them and went offline. Their eyes suddenly lit up. Qianli's drunken drunk was clearly embarrassed. Which expert could chase Qianli to this extent? The three of them hurriedly threw away the cards in their hands and rushed to the entrance of the safe zone. It was a barren land outside, and the players who passed by were like passers-by. There was not a single trace of expert aura on them. The three of them were stunned for a moment, and when they turned back to look at the place where Gu Fei had disappeared, they were confused again. Gu Fei did not intend to leave without returning, so he took a roundabout route. He first pretended to go offline, and then went back online invisibly. The advantage of going online invisibly was that his name would not be revealed, and the system would not help him notify others. He could then slowly communicate with these students. Gu Fei couldn't help but shiver when he thought about how these students would have the same amount of time as him in the coming month. Glue and the other two were still at a loss. 5 minutes later, a white light flashed and Gu Fei was back online. The three of them were stunned. Gu Fei smiled at them and sent a message without moving. He must be in a hurry to pee. Horani speculated. Oh, probably. Huoyu Hao hastily ran over and logged off for 5 minutes. The three of them didn't dare to think about anything else. Initially, Gu Fei did not want to send a message to Afa. This fellow who had betrayed him before was not trustworthy. However, after scanning through the list of IDs, Gu Fei could not match them to the real person. After a long while, he had no choice but to contact Afa. Don't tell anyone that I'm here. Otherwise, you won't be able to pass the PE test next semester. Gu Fei threatened first. Obviously, Afa did not know that teacher Gu Fei was actually a very upright person. He was so scared that he almost peed his pants. He quickly said, "Teacher, it's not my fault. Your name was lit up just now. Everyone saw it. I've been here the whole time. Why did they only look for me at 2 a.m.? Gu Fei was curious. Of course, the students would not have just entered the game at 2 a.m. Oh, a few students came to the game today. At the beginning, everyone brought them along. After playing for a whole night, they were all tired, so they wanted to look for you to play, Afa said. Gu Fei was ashamed. He realized that he really had the protagonist's disease. He thought that if the students wanted to contact him, they should have done so immediately. However, in reality, there was a generation gap between the students and Gu Fei, be it in terms of age or occupation. This kind of generation gap might have been diluted in traditional online games. However, in this completely realistic environment, coupled with the fact that both parties knew each other in real life, the final result was that the gap was completely brought into the game. Obviously, these students did not really treat Gu Fei as their core friend. Today's incident was a good example. They had had enough of fooling around and were feeling a little tired. Suddenly, they realized that such a person was still lit up in their friend list. Only then did they remember that there was a teacher like Gu Fei in the game. Thinking back to Gu Fei's voice, most of them were asking for money, equipment, missions, and even performances from Gu Fei. In summary, they were just making fun of Gu Fei. These guys. Gu Fei did not know whether to laugh or cry. Teacher, are you in White Stone City? How do I get to White Stone City? Fei asked. After thinking it through, Gu Fei knew that these students said they wanted to come to White Stone City not because he was here. Gu Fei was just a physical education teacher. Their teacher-student relationship was not that close. He immediately replied, "What are you guys doing in White Stone City?" Gu Fei had already made up his mind. If this brat dared to shamelessly reply, "To see you," he would definitely teach him a lesson next semester. As expected, a young man's temperament was not that complicated. Fei was very frank. "I've played in Cloud City for a long time. I want to change to a main city. I heard that the main cities in the game are different." As expected, "Teacher, where are you?" "Then we'll come too." This was just a matter of pushing the boat with the current. Gu Fei was not the main reason they wanted to come. Not at all. If it's White Stone City, we'll first leave Cloud City and walk through the Black Dragon Mountain Range. After that, we'll reach Moonlit Night City. From there, we'll walk in the direction of Moonlit Village. Then, we'll follow the main road to White Stone City, Gu Fei said. There won't be any danger on the way, right? A few of my classmates haven't even reached level 10. Fei said. Yeah, those who haven't reached level 10 are very safe. As for those who have passed level 10, Gu Fei said. Fei was shocked. But Moonlit Night City is full of gangsters. The streets are full of bandits. When they encounter unfamiliar players, all of their equipment will be dropped, all of their money will be emptied, and all of their levels will drop. Those who are below level 10 are protected by PK, so it's very safe, Gu Fei said. Really? Fei hesitated. More or less. In any case, it was like that when I first went there. Gu Fei was very unkind. He was a man who would stir up a storm of blood wherever he went. How could he compare himself to these well-behaved students? Then what should we do? Is there any other place we can go? Fei was scared. He was still the highest level among the students. Whenever there was danger, everyone would put him at the front. Fei was a mage, and he was always singing, "I am the main tank," and washing his face with tears. Thinking about the place they were going to this time, and the fact that there was a group of classmates behind him who were ready to send him to his death at any time, Fei felt that he would end up like what Gu Fei said, all of his equipment will be dropped, all of his money will be emptied, and all of his levels will drop. Yeah, don't be afraid. You guys go first, I'll make arrangements for you, Gu Fei said. What's wrong? Fei asked. You guys make a big flag and write a clear flag number on it. After you leave the Black Dragon Mountain Range, carry the flag and walk. I'll greet my friends over there. When they see your flag, they'll take care of you in secret. I guarantee that you guys won't have to worry about anything, Gu Fei said. Carrying a flag looks so ugly, teacher. This was the time when young people valued their own image the most. Even the boys and girls valued it as much. At least it looks better than running around naked with no equipment. Gu Fei said. Fei didn't say anything. He probably went to discuss with the other students. This discussion obviously exposed Gu Fei's existence. Gu Fei immediately received questions from the other students. Teacher, is Moonlit Night City really that scary? Of course, you have to be careful, Gu Fei said. Then are there any other places to go? A student asked. Probably not. This sentence was actually the truth. Cloud City was located at the border of the parallel worlds map. The only place that could be connected to was Moonlit Night City. Oh. There was silence. The students obviously went to discuss again. After a while, Gu Fei received a reply. All right then, what should we write on the flag? Should we write your name, teacher? Please don't. Gu Fei hurriedly said, I have friends and enemies. Writing my name is too bad. You guys can just write something simple and easy to recognize. Then write 3. We're from class 3. Fei said. All right, then you guys can go on your way. I'll let them know, Gu Fei said. Understood. The group of students immediately went to work, leaving Gu Fei to snicker at the side. Thinking about a group of players passing by with a flag, even Gu Fei felt that it was a stupid move. These kids always wanted to make fun of him. Let's make fun of them. Gu Fei didn't mind playing such harmless pranks at all. But his series of changes in expression were too scary in the eyes of the observant people. For example, Glue and the other two had been staring at Gu Fei ever since he came online. But after Gu Fei came online, he didn't move at all and just stared at him. The three of them who were familiar with the game knew that he was chatting in a message. But Gu Fei's expression, one moment he looked ashamed, the next moment he had a cold sneer, and the last moment he looked like he was secretly delighted that his plan had succeeded. It was too suspicious. Before the three could finish their analysis, Gu Fei's gaze suddenly turned. He had already ended the chat and looked at them with a wicked smile. Not good. Did this guy set up a trap for us? The three couldn't help but think. Fire-burning clothes couldn't help but ask, "What do you want?" Glue and Lin Sensei looked over. Fire-burning clothes' lines from idol dramas were always so lethal. What was even more impressive was that he said it in such a way. Gu Fei wasn't hurt. When he heard the question, he was startled. "What do you mean? What are you up to now?" Fire-burning clothes said. "Huh, you saw through it?" Gu Fei said. "As expected." The three took a deep breath. "Be careful, I've already gathered a large group of people to deal with you. All your equipment, money, and levels dropped. Terrible, so terrible," Gu Fei said as he left the revival point. Glue and the other two's faces were pale as they hurriedly informed the others of the bad news. "This isn't good. Qianli is actually gathering helpers to deal with us." "Helpers? Don't blame me for being arrogant. Let's be honest. If Qianli wants to deal with us, why would he need helpers?" Dao Xiangmu said. "That's why it's so scary. He's already calling for helpers. Think about how cruel his next move will be." Glue said. "How do you know?" Jianen asked. "He just said it." Glue replied. "You believe him just because he said it. Seriously." Dao Xiangmu felt that these guys were really frightened by the mere twang of a bow. It doesn't seem fake. Just now, Qianli was sending messages here for half a day. It's very likely that he's gathering helpers. Glue said. Chapter 590. Qianli calls people when he's drunk. Ken and Yu felt that the problem was serious. This was because they had done a detailed investigation and research on Gu Fei. Not only was this person extremely powerful, he also had quite a strong background. Just the few elite experts in his mercenary group were already extremely difficult to deal with. Slender Waist Dancer and 100 Years Strategist were even more valiant. However, these people were only individual heroes at the end of the day. Sometimes, they couldn't split into two. The truly terrifying background of Qianli Drunk was related to the 10 Meetings Alliance in Moonlit Night City. The 10 Meetings Alliance was a group of people who had turned over a new leaf. Their unity was created in a special environment. In other main cities, they could only form such a large group. It was impossible for them to have the cohesiveness of the 10 Meetings Alliance. The 10 Meetings Alliance was actually just one party. It was divided into 10 parties because of the restrictions of the system. And Qianli Drunk was rumored to be the founder and mainstay of the revolution in Moonlit Night City. He had forged a deep friendship with the people of the 10 Meetings Alliance during the revolution. The leader of the 10 Meetings Alliance, Yun Zhongmu, was still indebted to him. If Qianli Drunk waved his arm, too terrifying. Ken and Yu didn't dare to think further. This was an ocean of people's war. They only had 7 people. Whether it was underground warfare, lightning warfare, or guerrilla warfare, they couldn't deal with it. The game seemed to be over. Damn, how did the 10 Meetings Alliance grow into such a team? Ken and Yu thought angrily. He suddenly realized that the formation of the 10 Meetings Alliance was completely due to Silver Moon's contribution. Where's Silver Moon? Has he shown himself? Ken and Yu asked his brothers who were lying in ambush. Originally, he didn't approve of killing Silver Moon. However, seeing that his brothers were full of fighting spirit, he felt very gratified. However, he finally couldn't hold it in anymore. He realized that Silver Moon was really a scourge. There was nothing disgusting that he couldn't do. Not yet. Looking at the situation, he probably won't show himself until morning. Dao Xiangmu said. What about Qianli drunk? Danan, if he's looking for someone, it's very likely that he's looking for someone from the Ten Societies Alliance. Glu was clearly aware of Gu Fei's background. Let's confirm it first. Blackwater, go take a look at Moonlit Night City. If the other party has a large-scale operation, it should be easy to detect. Jiannin said. Alright. Blackwater, who was trying to save his level, immediately headed toward Moonlit Night City after receiving the order. Everyone else, go about your own business. Jiannin said. Everyone anxiously continued with what they were doing. Glu and the other two were no longer in the mood to play cards. They sat in a circle and discussed their uncertain future with worry. Gu Fei, on the other hand, was considering whether or not he should greet the evil tyrant of Moonlit City, Yun Zhongmu. Although the hellish description of the Moonlit Night City was infinitely exaggerated by him, it was indeed not a safe place. Children were ignorant and impulsive, and they might really get into trouble. After thinking about it, Gu Fei felt that it was better to be responsible for his students. Thus, he searched for Yun Zhongmu's friend list. Boss Yun, are you here? Gu Fei greeted Yun Zhongmu like a normal player. Yun Zhongmu and Gu Fei had added each other as friends when they passed by Moonlit Night City for the Reigning the Four Seas quest. After adding each other, it became a decoration and had never been used. When he suddenly received Gu Fei's message, Yun Zhongmu was leading a group of brothers to bully a guild. Plus, it was the middle of the night, so he was a bit muddle-headed. He tried his best to clear his head, and when he saw that it really was Qianli drunk, he immediately stopped what he was doing and focused on texting. Qianli drunk was becoming more and more famous. The news of him selling his sword in White Stone City had already spread all over the forums. It was impossible to take a screenshot, but someone directly described the sword's attributes. Countless people almost peed their pants after seeing it. This sword was too scary. But what was even more frightening was that the sword's owner had actually happily sold it. There were only two circumstances for such a powerful equipment to be sold in the game. 1. The owner was leaving the game, and 2. The owner had an even more powerful weapon, and the sword was no longer in use. When they thought of the second possibility, many people couldn't help but pee their pants. Brother Qianli? What's up? Yun Zhongmu stopped what he was doing and focused on texting Gu Fei. He was going to ask about the sword's whereabouts. The forums said that it was sold to Slender Waist Dance, but according to what Yun Zhongmu knew, Slender Waist Dance and Gu Fei were friends. This was a bit strange. It's like this. I have a class of students who want to go from Cloud City to White Stone City. When they pass by Moonlit City, don't bully them. Gu Fei said, class of students? Yun Zhongmu looked at this term and felt that it was much more bizarre than the Night Streamer sword. I saw a group with a flag with the number 3 on it. It's them. Gu Fei continued. Oh. Yun Zhongmu replied. He still didn't understand what was going on. Thank you very much. Gu Fei had already said everything. Yun Zhongmu hurriedly shouted again. HM? I've been looking at the forums for the past 2 days. Brother Gu, your sword is really powerful. Yun Zhongmu hurriedly asked for information. You sold it to Slender Waist Dance? Yun Zhongmu asked. No, I'm just joking. It's still in my hands. Gu Fei said. Oh, then when do you want to sell it? I want it. I don't care how much it costs. Yun Zhongmu could be said to be rich and overbearing. He didn't rely on himself, but on the group. His group of players were loyal and united. If there was something they really needed to buy, they could spend a few gold coins to buy it. Okay. Gu Fei didn't care about this kind of thing at all. Thank you, thank you. Also, what's up with your students? Yun Zhongmu still didn't understand before. It's a group of my students. There's about 20 or 30 of them. They'll pass by Moonlit City in a bit. I've experienced how strong you guys are over there. I'm afraid that my students won't know better and will be bullied. That's why I asked Boss Yun to take care of them. Gu Fei said, Oh, so it's like that? I understand now. Yun Zhongmu still didn't understand what students meant, but he didn't want to ask anymore. He then said, how about brother Qianli give me their ID and I'll add them as friends. It'll be easier to contact them. That's fine. Thank you. Gu Fei immediately gave him Fei's ID. Then he quickly sent Fei a message. In a bit, someone called Yun Zhongmu will add you as a friend. He'll help you guys leave Moonlit City safely. Understood. Fei immediately replied. After everything was arranged, Gu Fei couldn't help but shake his head with a bitter smile. What was this all about? On the side of Moonlit City, Yun Zhongmu was a man of his word. He took Gu Fei's matter to heart and immediately added Fei as a friend. Yun Zhongmu asked Fei where they were, but this was the first time Fei had taken this route. His description was vague. Yun Zhongmu had only walked this route twice, so how could he know the coordinates? He did some addition and subtraction with his current coordinates. It wasn't too close, but it wasn't too far either. Yun Zhongmu didn't dare to delay. He gathered some of his brothers and prepared to welcome them on the main road from Cloud City. The coordinates that Yun Zhongmu calculated weren't too far, but that was the distance in a straight line. Walking on the mountain road wasn't the same thing. Fei and the others had just started their journey not long ago. Yun Zhongmu waited for 3 whole hours. Many of his brothers were so tired that they fell asleep on the ground. Finally, a group of people appeared in Yun Zhongmu's field of vision. At the front of the group was a flag that fluttered in the wind. They're finally here. Yun Zhongmu was excited. He kicked the people who were lying on the ground and didn't care about their image. He reminded them to stay alert and not let others look down on them. When they came closer, Yun Zhongmu's eyes widened. He carefully looked at them one by one. Finally, he couldn't help but curse, "Damn it, they're really students." Although Gu Fei clearly used the word students, Yun Zhongmu always thought that it was a special way for Qianli to call his younger brother or brother. It was just like how Yun Zhongmu and his brothers called each other grandsons. How could they really be grandsons? But now that he saw them in person, Yun Zhongmu realized that the students that Qianli had mentioned were really students. After secretly using a few more appraisal skills, Yun Zhongmu was even more shocked. The appraisal results showed that the person who was holding the flag was the highest level. He was level 36. The others were in the 20s and 30s. What was even more ridiculous was that there were some who weren't even level 10. In order to show off his style, the people that Yun Zhongmu brought with him were all top-notch experts. When he realized that he was dealing with a bunch of messy kids, he looked at Yun Zhongmu with disdain. The student army also noticed the group of people in front of them. They all looked fierce and murderous. After using their appraisal skills, a string of big question marks appeared. They couldn't help but speculate in their hearts. Fa was just about to contact Yun Zhongmu when he saw a bandit walking over from the other side. He asked with a bitter face, "Whose imminent death?" Everyone's gaze was focused on Fa. There was no need for him to answer. "I'm Yun Zhongmu." Yun Zhongmu endured the group of kids sizing him up curiously and introduced himself. Oh, so it's you. You scared me." Fa let out a long sigh. He was scared out of his wits when he was asked who was imminent death. He didn't even dare to answer. His classmates didn't disappoint him either. They quickly sold him out. "Qianli told me to take care of you guys." Yun Zhongmu didn't know how to phrase his words. He had killed people and flirted with girls in the game, but he had never taken care of kids. Qianli was drunk. This grandson, he actually made me live like this. Yun Zhongmu grumbled in his heart. Thank you. We're going to White Stone City," Fa said. "Okay, this way? Keep the flag." Yun Zhongmu led the way. When he turned around and saw that Fa was still valiantly waving his 3 flag, his face darkened. The students followed behind Yun Zhongmu, chattering and pointing out the scenery in Moonlit Night City that was different from Cloud City. Yun Zhongmu's group of brothers accompanied him, all of them at a loss. They had seen kids in the game before, but they had never seen such a large group of kids. What should they do now? Should they go up and have a chat with them? What are they talking about? What do kids play these days? Are you still playing Transformers? Watching the Black Cat Sheriff? Do you know about Blue Skin Mouse and Big-Faced Cat? Yun Zhongmu and his brothers were experts at hacking people to begin with, but they weren't good at communicating, let alone the fact that there was a clear generation gap between them and the children. The group of fellows were at a loss as to what to do as they walked, feeling like this road was incredibly long. They finally arrived at Luminous Village. Once they left the village, there were no other leveling areas. Aside from White Stone City, there were no other players. Yun Zhongmu stopped and turned around. He said to Fa, "Once we leave this village, we'll reach White Stone City along the main road. There aren't many leveling areas on this road, so there shouldn't be any more danger." "Oh, thank you. Then we'll go on our own," Fa hurriedly said. "Okay. Slow down, slow down. Be careful." Yun Zhongmu didn't even know what he was saying. The students waved at the kind-hearted people in their hearts as they left. "Goodbye, uncle." Some of them even shouted at Yun Zhongmu passionately. "Uncle!" Yun Zhongmu was petrified. Am I that old? Especially that one. His fucking beard is even longer than mine, and he still has the face to call me uncle? Yun Zhongmu wanted to cry. He turned around and looked at his brothers. They were all lying on the ground laughing. "Your students have already safely left Moonlit Night City." Yun Zhongmu didn't forget to inform Gu Fei. He was someone who would finish what he started. "Thank you, Boss Yun." Gu Fei hurriedly thanked him. "You're welcome," Yun Zhongmu replied. After replying, he couldn't help but ask another question. "Brother Qianli, how do you know so many kids?" "They're all my students," Gu Fei said. "You're a teacher?" Yun Zhongmu asked. "Yes." "A teacher bringing his students to play online games?" Yun Zhongmu was at a loss. Society had already progressed to this stage? It seemed like he really was getting old. "Old Yun, there's someone over there." At this moment, someone suddenly sent a message to Yun Zhongmu. He moved closer to him and quietly pointed in a certain direction. Yun Zhongmu looked in that direction. There was no one there, but he knew that this brother had an anti-stealth skill. The person he was talking about was definitely the thief who was in stealth. Everyone had already received the message. At this moment, they all glanced at each other and pretended that nothing was going on. However, they inadvertently moved closer to that direction. However, this thief who was in stealth was clearly much more vigilant than they thought. He had already sensed their intentions. He suddenly appeared and swiftly ran away. "Grandson, don't run!" Yun Zhongmu roared. He wanted to chase after him, but it was already too late. The archers beside him released a few arrows, but they didn't cause much of a hindrance. In the blink of an eye, the thief had already run far away. As expected of the 10 Guilds Alliance. They had so many talents. They even had anti-stealth skills. The thief who was discovered was Blackwater. He was much faster than Fa and the others. He had already arrived before they even reached Moonlit Night City. He had been waiting at Luminous Village, a place where one had to pass on the way to White Stone City, to see if there were any teams heading towards White Stone City. At this moment, he was relaying this news to South Azure Sword and the others. South, Yun Zhongmu just sent a group of people to White Stone City. There are 26 of them. They're not very old and their equipment is very poor. I don't know what their intentions are. Yun Zhongmu has also gathered 20 or so experts. I wanted to monitor their movements, but I was discovered. They have anti-stealth skills, Blackwater reported. Chapter 591. What do you mean by young age and bad equipment? Southern Azure Sword didn't understand why Yun Zhongmu would send this vanguard. Was it disgusting? I don't know. They look like a bunch of kids. I don't even need to appraise their equipment to know it's trash. Blackwater said. As a veteran robber, he obviously knew a lot about equipment. What did Yun Zhongmu and the others do? Southern Azure Sword asked. I ran away. They don't seem to have any intentions of chasing after me. Blackwater said. Yun Zhongmu and the others didn't plan on investigating. They had tens of thousands of enemies in Moonlit Night City. Having a stealth thief sneak up on them was a common occurrence. If they could catch them, they would kill them. If they couldn't, then they would just forget about it. If everyone was so calculative, then they wouldn't be able to continue living. As a result, after seeing Blackwater run away, Yun Zhongmu and the others retreated. The sudden appearance of this little thief was not even an interlude to his gaming career. At this time, he was still holding a grudge against those brats who called him uncle, especially the one with a beard longer than his. Should I keep an eye on Yun Jong-moo or those brats? Blackwater asked Southern Azure Sword. Are those brats really that bad? Did they purposely wear trash to hide themselves? Southern Azure Sword said, they're really that bad. I'm afraid you won't believe me if I tell you. Out of those 26 players, some aren't even level 10. Blackwater said, not even level 10? Southern Azure Sword felt more and more suspicious. The biggest advantage of level 10 players was that they were protected from PK. Of course, they couldn't PK others. Could it be that there was a loophole in the rules? Which way? I can't even see them. Blackwater was anxious. Right now, Yun Jong-moo and the students were heading south and north. The two groups were about to disappear from his sight. Keep an eye on Yun Jong-moo's group. Leave those brats to us. Southern Azure Sword said. Understood. Blackwater replied and chased after Yun Jong-moo's group. Knowing that these guys had anti-stealth abilities, Blackwater didn't dare to get too close. After changing his equipment, he prepared to pretend to be an ordinary leveling player and keep them within his line of sight. What's the situation with Qianli drunk? Jian Nanyu asked Glue and the others. He hasn't appeared since he left the resurrection point, Glue replied. Oh, Danan, what's the situation now? Glue and the others had also been thinking about this matter. The past 3 hours had not been peaceful at all. When Blackwater was in Moonlit City, he saw that Cloud Twilight had sent a team to White Stone City. However, strangely enough, this team's levels and equipment are very poor. They haven't even reached level 10 yet, Southblade said, not bothering to hide the truth. What's going on? I'm not sure yet. Does anyone have any opinions? Silence ensued. No one dared to make a judgment. Then let's first test the depth of this group of people before making a decision. Jiannin said. Great South. Everyone was alarmed. If the waters were too deep, wouldn't this group of people be unable to return? Throw caution to the wind. I will buy another teleportation scroll. Jian Nanyu gritted his teeth. It's not convenient for you to go to the auction house, is it? Glue said. Well, who's convenient to go? There's still a teleportation scroll. I saw it when I bought it, Jian Nanyu said. Then I'll go. Invincible Lucky Star volunteered. He was the only one left. Glue and the other two were guarded by Qianli at the resurrection point, and Dao Xiangmu had to wait for Silver Moon at the Thieves' Guild. Apart from him, no one else was free. Hurry up and go. I'll wait for you at the South Gate, Jian Nanyu said. The South Gate was the entrance to the city from Moonlit City. Should we go take a look as well? Glue asked Flaming Undergarment and Lin Sinsen. 1,000 Miles Drunk is still outside, right? Flaming Undergarment stretched her neck out of the gate. It was already late at night and there were very few people on the streets. However, there was still no sign of Qianli. Flaming Undergarment suddenly felt that it was better to have that annoying smiling face in front of her. It was better than having it disappear without a trace. Why don't I go? My speed is comparable to his. Even if he bumps into me, I can still escape, Glue said. He can teleport, Flaming Undergarment reminded. There's a limit to teleportation. Do you see him 10 meters away from the door? Glue said, no. That's why I'll run the moment I get out. What can he do even if he sees me? Glue said. Flaming Undergarment and Lin Sinsen nodded. However, they weren't fast enough, so they didn't participate in this activity. The two solemnly brought Glue to the entrance of the resurrection point. Glue also nodded solemnly and ran out in a flash. Gu Fei, who was on a rooftop in the distance, raised his eyelids when he saw what was happening. When he saw that it wasn't Silver Moon, he didn't think much of it. Instead, he stretched his head in another direction and asked, Are you done? Almost. A player was barbecuing meat on a fire rack under the eaves. Barbecuing wasn't something that only existed in Waterside City. It was just that it was more interesting to step on the beach and watch the crowds while listening to the waves. Actually, a street stall like this was closer to the real life. When Gu Fei came back from the resurrection point, he accidentally saw a chef selling food at the corner of the wall. Moreover, he was selling food on the spot. He immediately gave him a hard look. This is a good life. Gu Fei held a book in one hand and took the freshly cooked meat with the other. He sent a message to Fa and the others. How is it? Where are you now? It's so far. The students wailed. They spent the entire night playing the game on the road. The first half of the journey was still fine, but the second half was enough to make them want to die. 80% of the students were already regretting playing the boring game of relocation. Most of their energy was used to track down the culprit who came up with this stupid idea. Keep it up, we're almost there. Gu Fei had no idea where the students were at, so he randomly comforted them. Keep it up, the teacher said we're almost there. Fa also didn't know what to do, so he casually comforted them. The road from Moonlit Night City to White Stone City was straight and flat. It was much shorter than the road from Cloud City to Moonlit Night City. After about 2 hours, the students finally saw the majestic White Stone City. They were so excited that their eyes were brimming with tears. It was almost 7 o'clock, the legal time for the all-nighters to go offline. The players came out from the various leveling areas and walked towards the White Stone City. For a moment, there was a brief bustle. In the weeds outside the South Gate, South Azure Sword, Glue, and Unrivaled Lucky Star were crouched, nervously watching the passing players. Is it this group? Is it this group? 26 people. Can't we count them first? South Azure Sword was depressed. They're all in groups. Who knows if they're together or not? Glue was depressed. They'll probably come from the main road. South Azure Sword said. Then it's this group. Glue casually pointed at the group of people that were staggering along the main road. The mage in front was carrying a flag. 1, 2, 3, 4. South Azure Sword counted carefully. 26. It's them. When he finished counting, South Azure Sword shrunk his body and checked if the 3 of them were hidden well enough. Glue and Unrivaled Lucky Star were also observing carefully, trying to figure out who this group that was invited by Qianli and personally escorted by Cloud Twilight were. Oh my god, with this equipment, can I call them primitive people? Glue was the first to exclaim. Appraisal. I don't think it's necessary, Unrivaled Lucky Star said. Just like Blackwater, they could tell what the equipment was just by looking at it. What's written on the mage's flag? 3 foot? What does that mean? Glue saw the 3 flag on Fa's shoulder. South Azure Sword and Unrivaled Lucky Star scratched their heads. Also, don't you think it's weird for a mage to do this? Even if it's not a warrior, there's no need for a mage to do it, right? Glue said. Yeah, it's a little weird. The 3 of them could see clearly that there were all kinds of classes in the 26-man team. Could it be that this mage is like Qianli's drunk, adding stat points in another way? Glue made a bold guess. Is Qianli's drunk agility adding stat points to strength? Unrivaled Lucky Star said. How else would you explain a mage doing the physical work? Glue said. A strength mage. Unrivaled Lucky Star muttered. With a mountain monster like Qianli's drunk, they didn't dare to casually say that a mage that didn't add intelligence or spirit was trash. Damn, there's really someone below level 10. That guy is only level 7. After the other party entered the range of appraisal, Glue couldn't help but use appraisal. In the end, he hit the jackpot. It was a level 7 thief that didn't have a complete set of equipment. He was wearing clothes without a belt, a hat, and no shoes. Isn't it weird? Even if he's new to the game, since he has so many companions, it shouldn't be that he doesn't have a complete set of equipment, right? Moreover, there's no level restriction for equipment in the parallel world. Even if it's a level 0 player, their equipment might not be bad. Unrivaled Lucky Star said. This was also a matter of experience. They had once seen a level 9 player swagger through the streets with an exquisite weapon, attracting a bunch of robbers like red-eyed rabbits. However, this guy just didn't go to level up. Instead, he wore the halo of PK protection, which made the robbers want to choke on their greed. In the end, before he could finish leveling up, internal strife broke out among the robbers, resulting in a large number of casualties. It was this incident that made South Ranger feel that hunting in the wild wasn't reliable. That was why he walked the path of accepting targeted employment from clients. You mean they're pretending to be pigs to eat tigers? Glue said. Maybe. Look at their stupid faces. Don't you have the urge to go up and bully them? Unrivaled Lucky Star said. Could they be in the same trade? Glue said. There were all kinds of methods in the robbery industry. Some robbers would use their own exquisite equipment to lure other robbers and then rob them. This kind of thing usually happened when a team had just completed a robbery and was returning home. At this time, they had goods and PK points, so they were worth robbing. And at this time, if you found a stupid player on the way back with exquisite equipment, as a cultured and responsible robber, you were bound to have the thought of taking advantage of the situation. Often, a tragedy would happen in the blink of an eye. This kind of robbery was the type that would grab and leave. They wouldn't keep a close eye on the target. Success or failure would be decided in one round. Therefore, the people who committed the crime would often change places after a shot. They would move around and exploit the hard work of the robbers. They were the kind of robbers that were despised by other robbers. And this group of kids in front of them, although they didn't reveal any exquisite equipment, their cowardly faces were extremely tempting. It was possible that they had some new ideas for robbing. Robbers also needed to survive and develop. How could they not have new ideas? Great South, what do you think? Glue and Unrivaled Lucky Star muttered to each other. Excellent South didn't say a word. He watched as the group of 26 strode past the three of them. Excellent South still didn't say anything. He just pointed in a certain direction with his mouth, indicating that the two of them should pay attention. The two of them looked over and saw another group of players. There were about 10 or so of them. They looked like hooligans and were pointing at the 26 players. However, they weren't hiding in the bushes like Excellent South's group. Instead, they were openly standing on the side of the road and laughing at the 26 players. The three of them looked at each other. There would never be a lack of people like these who bullied others for fun. There were a lot of them in the game. This group of people was a heaven-sent test. It looked like they would be able to see how deep or shallow these 26 players were. The three of them were excited. They stared unblinkingly at the actions of this group of people. How would they react? Would they change equipment? What would be the use of those level 10 and under players in PvP? This was a question that Excellent South was especially concerned about. Hey, hey, hey. This, hey, wasn't a shout. It was a cry of surprise from Glue. These 26 players faced the group of people who were mocking and provoking them, but they didn't do anything. Instead, they took a detour. No way. They have so much self-restraint. Youngsters these days are amazing. Glue exclaimed in surprise. These were clearly kids. Didn't they say that kids these days relied on their familiarity with the Protection of Minors Act to understand the law and run amok? The media was just spouting nonsense. However, things didn't end there. Those hooligans couldn't hide. Seeing the 26 players take a detour, they chased after them and harassed them. The archer in the group even used a homing arrow to tease the little girl in the group. This is too ridiculous. They can even tolerate this. Glue was dumbfounded. The answer was clearly no. The 26 players glared angrily and loudly rebuked them. Unrivaled Lucky Star was also excited. He almost jumped out of the bushes. The strength mage is going to attack. Even though it's a sneak attack. The mage holding the flag quietly put away the flag and moved to the side. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention, he suddenly took out a staff and raised it. The combination of Heavenly Fire Wheel and Flaming Tree Thousand Layers Flames was instantly summoned and smashed onto the group of people. The people who had their eyes on the spell acted as if nothing had happened. A warrior stepped on a sea of fire and strode forward, swinging his greatsword with both hands. Where are they? Unrivaled Lucky Star asked. They seem to have been sent flying. Glue missed his eagle eye. If it was still there, he would definitely be able to see where they had flown to. What's going on? Unrivaled Lucky Star was confused. What else is going on? A bunch of rookies. Excellent South wasn't in a good mood. The sneak attack was quite successful. At least those people didn't notice it. Unrivaled Lucky Star said. This sneak attack was obviously the fuse. In just a few words, the two sides had already started fighting. In just an instant, the 26 people had already turned into 23 people. Excellent South didn't see the magical effect of PK protection. The few players who were below level 10 were thrown out of the battle like outsiders. They could only wave the things in their hands and shout and curse loudly. The remaining people who were fighting were obviously no match for them. They were immediately beaten up. However, no one retreated. Everyone consciously protected the few little girls in the team. Fuck, I can't watch anymore. Glue said. Yeah. Excellent South had already drawn his sword. Unrivaled Lucky Star began to bless the three of them. Glue jumped out of the bushes. As he drew his bow, he cleared his throat and prepared to speak. Get down. Excellent South suddenly jumped up and pushed Glue back into the bushes. Fuck, what's going on? Jian Nanyu used so much force that his head, which was made of glue, was almost stuffed into the mud by him. He struggled to raise his head and saw that a ring of fire had already descended from the sky. Half of the people who had yet to rush into the battle immediately disappeared. Following that, a black figure suddenly flashed into their formation. After 2 flashes of fire, the other half also vanished into thin air. The people in the chaotic battle were all stunned. However, this person didn't hold back at all. He rushed into the chaotic battle and picked out these people one by one and accurately killed them. In less than a minute, the team of more than 10 people who had been flaunting their prowess was only left with a mere 3 people. The 3 of them were already scared out of their wits. They hugged their heads and fled in all directions. In the end, they weren't spared either. One was awarded with a lightning bolt, another was chased by a small fireball, and the third person was very lucky. He was personally chased by the person himself. At this time, the person had clearly used up all his magic power. He punched and kicked. The prung-pang sound of fists hitting flesh was truly unforgettable. The remaining guy was beaten to the point where he swayed left and right. Excellent South and the other 2 also shrunk lower and lower. Glue's head looked like it was about to be stuffed back into the mud. As expected of Qianli drunk. Invincible Lucky Star's face was deathly pale. Shoo! Glue's head hid in the mud and said. The last survivor was finally beaten to death. The group of rookies surrounded him as if they had seen a family member. Some were laughing, some were crying, and some were cursing at the enemy who didn't even have a corpse. Teacher, you're lying. The uncles in Moonlit Night City are very kind. The people here are too bad. A student cried. The uncles in Moonlit Night City? Gu Fei was at a loss. He thought to himself, could they be talking about Twilight in the Clouds? Gu Fei almost cursed in front of the students. Let's go, let's go. Let's enter the city first. Gu Fei said. General Little Wu and the class monitor were killed and returned to the city. A student said, it's fine, it's fine. When we get back, we'll get a scroll and directly teleport over. Gu Fei said, then why didn't you teleport us earlier? A student asked, how could we have so much money? Gu Fei was angry. This group of students, all they wanted to do was take advantage of him all day long. Gu Fei led the students into the city. After a while, Excellent South and the other 2 poked their heads out from the bushes. Oh, damn, where are they? Why didn't they wait for me? A voice suddenly sounded out, scaring the 3 of them into shrinking back. They peeked their heads out and saw the sorcerer who ambushed them earlier crawl out from the bushes with his hands on his waist. Excellent South and the other 2 rolled their eyes at the sky. Chapter 592. After everyone had left, Azure Blade and the other 2 crawled out from the bushes and looked at each other. These kids don't seem to have any background, do they? Lucky Star said. I think I heard them call Qianli drunk teacher. Glue said, teacher? Students? Azure Blade's confusion was the same as Cloud Twilight's. Bringing students to play online games? Did the extracurricular activities have this kind of content? False alarm. Glue patted the dust off his body. Although he was in a sorry state, he felt quite comfortable. At least this time it wasn't a threat to them. Blackwater, these people aren't a threat. You stay in Moonlit City and continue to pay attention to Cloud Twilight's movements. As the boss, Azure Blade always thought more deeply than the others. Cloud Twilight and the others seemed to be preparing to go offline. At this moment, the all-nighters in Moonlit City also started to go offline. Alright, you can rest too, Azure Blade said. Let's go back to the city. After sending the message to Blackwater, Azure Blade called Glue and Lucky Star to go back to the city. The two of them were telling Hualini and the others about what they had just seen as a joke. Of course, some of the awkward actions of the three of them in the process had to be ignored. What is Qianli trying to do when he's drunk? Is he trying to run a kindergarten and become the king of children? Hualini laughed after hearing this. Although it wasn't a very funny thing, as long as Qianli was embarrassed, he would find it very funny. Did Silver Moon show up? Azure Blade asked the people squatting at the 2 revival points. No. The answer was unanimous. Silver Moon is not online anymore. Glue, who was Silver Moon's friend, told everyone. This kid is really lucky. He actually didn't go to these 2 safe zones. Everyone sighed. Alright, everyone is tired. Let's rest first. We'll talk about other things when we're online. Azure Blade said. Danon, the ideal magic staff. Everyone vaguely reminded each other. What should they do about the magic staff? Should they continue to persist or should they just give up? Everyone hoped for accurate information. Otherwise, they would always have a big stone in their hearts. Let me think if there's any other way, Azure Blade said. Sigh. Everyone sighed. Jian Nanyu was really persistent. If I didn't keep an eye on it for a night, the staff might have already been taken away. Don't worry, not yet. Jian Nan smiled. What? Everyone was startled. Today, when I was walking the law-abiding staff, I discovered someone of the same trade. Jian Nanyu said. Are you saying that there are other teams eyeing this staff? That's right. When Lucky Star went to the auction house, they were still there. At the very least, it means that the staff hasn't been taken away. South Azure Sword said. What's next? You guys rest. I'll keep an eye on him, said Invincible Lucky Star. Clearly, he had already communicated with Jian Nan in private. Okay. Everyone responded. The 3 players in the safe zone quickly went offline. When Jian Nanyu and the other 2 returned to the main city, they purposely took a detour to the auction house. The 2 faces of Jian Nanyu and Glue were obviously very dangerous here, and if they were masked, they would be regarded as evildoers and would be alerted. The 3 of them didn't go too close. Jian Nanyu and Glue hid in the corner. After Invincible Lucky Star went in and walked around, he quickly ran out and nodded at the 2 of them. It's still here. Jian Nanyu smiled. This was a really good discovery. From now on, they didn't need to be mantises hunting cicadas, they could be orioles. Perhaps Qianli could be easily fooled when he was drunk. Then you keep an eye on it. The 2 of us will go first, and then we'll switch with you. South Yu said to Invincible Lucky Star. Okay, go quickly. Invincible Lucky Star nodded. They hadn't slept for the whole night, and they were still working. The robbers could be considered to have worked tirelessly from dawn to dusk. They were much more tired than the average player in the game, who asked for equipment to be dropped in the game to be more annoying than robbing in real life. Jian Nanyu and the others were instantly wiped out. Young Master's Elite Group, Slender Waist Dance, Vast Expanse, Fireball, these various players had all logged off after a busy night. Gu Fei, who had always been known for his short gaming time, had yet to get a chance to rest. The students had just arrived at White Stone City and witnessed Gu Fei killing more than 10 people in an instant. All of them were in a state of excitement, pestering Gu Fei with all sorts of questions. Gu Fei was about to break down. The 6 new players who joined the game today even boldly asked Gu Fei for equipment. From what they knew, other students had been rewarded with equipment by Gu Fei after they joined the game. They believed that their teacher should be fair and should not favor one over the other. However, the items that Gu Fei had accumulated in his warehouse had long since been used up during the previous reward. After that, he had gone on this quest with Reigning the 4 Seas, and it had been a long time since he had properly farmed monsters. How could he possibly have any harvest? Quiet, quiet. Gu Fei yelled at the students. Do you think I'm running a shop? All my equipment was shining last time. There's nothing left now. If you don't have any equipment, give us some money. We can buy it ourselves. The students refused to give up. I don't have any money either, Gu Fei said. All his money was in Sword Demon's account. Teacher, you're lying. A student curled his lips. The forum said that you sold your sword for 20,000 gold coins. How could you not have any money? That's right, that's right. Everyone jeered. Gu Fei's face was covered in tears. He was really a big shot in this game. He sold a sword, and he even made the headlines on the forum. Everyone knew about it. In order to prove his innocence, Gu Fei could only take out the Night Streak sword and show it to everyone. Look, the sword is still here. It was just a joke between teacher and a friend. I didn't really sell it. Ah, what a beautiful sword. Teacher, how about I make do with this sword? A student said. No matter how much Gu Fei didn't value equipment, he didn't want to give it to someone who was just making do with it. Looking at the student's yearning gaze, Gu Fei said meaningfully, Are you going to transfer schools next semester? The student was at a loss for a moment. Then he realized the threat in these words and cried, Teacher, spare me. A teacher couldn't take a person's life, but a physical education teacher could take half of your life. Be good and stop messing around. It's getting late. Let's all rest. You're still growing. How can you not sleep the whole night? Gu Fei said. The students snorted. It was really despicable to be lectured while playing a game. You're all going to transfer schools, aren't you? Gu Fei roared. The students cried as they lined up and walked towards the safe zone. You have to plan your time properly. It's only the first day of vacation and you're already this crazy. Gu Fei lectured. You can read less textbooks during vacation, but how can you not exercise? You have to maintain a certain amount of outdoor activity every day. As expected of a physical education teacher. He even dared to say such things like reading less textbooks. The students all sighed in admiration. Teacher, what do you do in the game every day? On the way to the safe zone, a student asked. Fight against the forces of evil. Gu Fei said. Everyone roared with laughter. What forces of evil? Teacher, bring us to fight together. Someone even jeered. You guys? We were almost exterminated by the forces of evil. What can we use to fight against them? Gu Fei said. Then teacher, bring us to level up. What's the point of leveling up? Gu Fei said. Then what do we do? The students were at a loss. Learn martial arts. Gu Fei said. Teacher's illness is acting up again. The students discussed and dispersed. After a good night's sleep, Gu Fei's body was much more sensitive than the average person's. He could clearly feel that this night's sleep couldn't completely make up for the exhaustion brought about by pulling an all-night. This kind of thing might be overlooked by normal people, but for someone like Gu Fei who was used to vigorous exercise, he could clearly feel the effects of pulling an all-nighter on his body. Simply put, although he had gotten some sleep after pulling an all-nighter, his body hadn't recovered to its peak condition. This couldn't go on. There was no harm in playing more games during vacation, but he couldn't stay up night after night to play. Moreover, there were more than 20 students gathered together. He had to set an example and let them see how to arrange their time properly. As he thought about it, Gu Fei entered the game. Teacher, why are you so late? Teacher, you're so late. Teacher, why did you sleep for so long? As soon as he went online, the message notifications kept ringing. It was so loud that Gu Fei's hands were trembling. As expected, sending messages was something that youngsters were better at. Why are you all so early? Did you rest properly? Gu Fei repeated the message 20 times. All right. Teacher, hurry up and bring us to level. The same message was replied 20 times. We'll talk when we meet. Gu Fei really couldn't stand this method of sending messages. Under a certain city gate, the 20 online students were already ready to go. The students were also very good at using the internet. Before going online, they had already searched for information on leveling in White Stone City. At this time, They had prepared dry rations and fruits and were about to rush to the leveling area. When Gu Fei rushed over to take a look, he saw that the guys who hadn't even reached level 10 yesterday, with the help of their classmates, were all dressed in a nondescript manner. Seeing Gu Fei come over, the group of kids cheered and hurriedly prepared to set off. "What's the rush?" Gu Fei said. "Level." Everyone loudly replied. "I already said that leveling is useless." Gu Fei said. "Teacher, don't tell me you're going to act up right after waking up." A student said. Gu Fei's nose almost became crooked from anger. He had already shown his skills in the game many times. Why did these kids still not know what was good for them? "Whether or not leveling is useful, I really want to let the 5 roaches in the game tell you," Gu Fei said. The students whispered among themselves. After a while, a student raised his hand and asked, "Teacher, what are the 5 roaches?" "Stupid. You don't even know the 5 roaches," Fa said with disdain. The 5 people with the highest experience ranking in the parallel world are called the 5 roaches. Do you know who they are? "I know." Another student jumped out. "I looked at the experience ranking yesterday. The 5 people with the highest are called Drifting 100 Years of Statecraft, Against the Current, Strange Pupil, and Sunset in the Cloud." Sunset in the Cloud? Gu Fei was startled. The ranking was updated again? He didn't do it himself. However, he quickly remembered that it was the slender waist dance that day. Sunset in the Cloud, it's the uncle from Moonlit Night City. He's one of the 5 roaches. He's amazing. The students discussed with admiration. Gu Fei saw that these guys were treating Sunset in the Cloud as their idol. Weren't they going astray? Just as he was about to speak, Fei had already made a long tisk sound. "That's why I said you guys aren't good enough." Fa said proudly, "The 5 roaches are ranked based on experience. You have to maintain it for a long time to be considered strong. Since the beginning of the game, only Drifting and 100 Years of Statecraft have been standing on this ranking. As for who the original people were, you guys wouldn't know them even if I told you. All you need to know is that those guys were all kicked off by our teachers. Everyone clap your hands." Fa led the applause. This action was undoubtedly a little silly. The students didn't move. They only looked at Gu Fei as if trying to seek the truth from him. Fa's words aren't accurate. "I wasn't the one who killed Slender Waist Dance," Gu Fei said. Fa immediately started lecturing again. "Do you guys know who this Slender Waist Dance is? She's the woman who bought Teacher's sword on the forum. She's the #1 RMB warrior in online gaming." Although Fa's skill level in the online gaming world wasn't that great, he was still considered a veteran. His words were clear and logical. "There's also Uncle Yun Zhongmu. You guys definitely don't know this. The reason he's so strong today is all because Teacher helped him defeat the evil former world guild in Moonlit Night City and helped him become the boss," Fa said. This was no longer a secret. The other students didn't know about it because they weren't as passionate about the game as Fa. Some of them were even beginners who had just been dragged into the game by their classmates. Now, they were confused by the term RMB warrior that Fa mentioned. "Teacher, then what's your ranking in the parallel world?" The students finally understood. Fa had been boasting for so long to tell them that Teacher Gu was a very, very impressive person. Idiot, didn't Teacher already say that level isn't important? Things like rankings are just fleeting clouds. If Teacher wants to be #1, he just has to kill everyone once. Isn't that right, Teacher? Fa smiled fawningly. That's enough. Gu Fei wasn't in a good mood. Although he knew that Fa was indeed boasting about him, why did he still feel uncomfortable all over? This didn't seem to be what he wanted to say. What did he want to say? Then level isn't important? What's important? Someone asked. Gu Fei's eyes immediately lit up. That's a good question. What's important? Of course it's martial arts. Gu Fei clenched his fist. The students all looked at each other. Fa immediately jumped out again. Everyone, don't doubt me. Actually, Teacher hasn't been lying all this time. He really knows martial arts. He's super powerful. You guys saw it this morning. More than 10 burly men were instantly killed by Teacher. Wasn't that an instant kill with magic? After all, there were still people who knew how to play games. They could tell that if it wasn't for the power of magic, there was no way he could have killed them so cleanly. Let me see if you can kill one in a second, Ah-Fe said unhappily. No one paid attention to Ah-Fe. Everyone turned to look at Gu Fei, hoping to find the truth from him. Regarding this, Ah-Fe wasn't exaggerating at all. Teacher is indeed very knowledgeable about martial arts. Gu Fei said, actually, it's not just me. For example, one of the 5 strong men that you guys mentioned just now, 100 generations of classics, also knows martial arts. If that's the case, why were you beaten up so badly by an old man, teacher? Someone mentioned the video that was widely circulated on the school's website. Every computer class student had seen this video. Gu Fei was actually a celebrity in the school. Because that old man is your teacher's father. Actually, Gu Fei had always wanted to explain this question, but he never had the chance. Everyone seemed to have agreed not to question this question at all. However, speaking of which, old man Gu was indeed very domineering in the video. Many people thought that they were no match for him, so they didn't dwell on this question too much. Is that so? The students began to whisper again. This was because this incident had a profound impact on Gu Fei. The entire school, including the principal, thought that he was very shameless. At this moment, the students were guessing. Was the shameless teacher Gu Fei trying to find a random father to get rid of the problem that had been bothering him for a long time? Gu Fei was already very satisfied to have a chance to tell the truth. He didn't care too much about whether the students believed him or not. He only continued saying, because this game is highly realistic, having super strong equipment or super high levels is far less practical than having exquisite combat skills. Teacher's equipment is indeed stronger, but if you don't believe me, I won't use any weapons or magic. Who wants to come up and try? Gu Fei asked. The students stared with their eyes wide open. Teacher Gu Fei seemed to be serious. Let me try? Someone among the students stood up. Gu Fei glanced at the student and smiled. Teacher, you won't punish me if I lose, right? The student was still worried. I'll only punish you if I win, so you better let me lose. Gu Fei smiled. Then I'll come. This boy was a warrior. As long as a mage didn't use any magic, not to mention weapons, he would have no chance of winning. If he fought, he would be in an invincible position. A mage who didn't use magic would have no attack power. How could he lose? He held the long sword in his hand and slashed at his chest. Gu Fei dodged to the side and reminded him, you can use skills. Then teacher, you have to be careful. The boy shouted, holding the sword with both hands and slashing at him with a backhand. Gu Fei had already seen that he was going to use whirlwind slash. This was the problem of many beginners. They didn't judge the situation and didn't look for opportunities. They only knew how to rely on their strongest skills. Gu Fei had already jumped 2 steps back. The boy was still holding the sword in a daze. Gu Fei took out an apple from his pocket and weighed it in his hand. After seeing it clearly, he suddenly threw it with all his might. Whirlwind Slash's attack wasn't just on the sword. The whirlwind that the sword created also had priority. Throwing an apple had no way of penetrating Whirlwind Slash. But that wasn't Gu Fei's goal. The apple accurately hit the tip of the boy's sword. It immediately split into 2 and bounced up and down. The top half was sucked into the whirlwind and was instantly crushed. The apple juice splashed onto the boy's face. The bottom half landed on the ground. The boy turned and stepped on it. He slipped and fell on his back. Chapter 593. The boy had already fallen to the ground, but he did not know what had happened. He checked his body in a daze and found that his health had dropped very little. His fighting spirit was ignited again, and he got up and continued to slash at Gu Fei. At this time, Gu Fei was ready to smile and say some pleasantries to continue promoting his kung fu, but before he could open his mouth, the boy's sword had already swung at Gu Fei. Gu Fei hurriedly dodged to the side and asked in surprise, "What?" The boy was also stunned. He quickly put away his sword and asked, "Are we not going to fight anymore? Do you really want to be beaten to death by me?" Gu Fei's face darkened. The boy scratched his head. I still have a lot of HP. Gu Fei was helpless. Isn't falling down enough? I was too careless. The boy reflected deeply. Then he found half an apple on the ground that had caused him to slip and kicked it away. He scolded, "Which idiot is littering?" Gu Fei's face darkened even more. He seemed to have played a little too skillfully. Did this fool not know that he had thrown the apple and caused him to fall? But the eyes of the crowd should be clear. Gu Fei looked at the other students, and the other students were looking at him. They did see that the apple was thrown by Gu Fei, but no one thought that this throw was the result of Gu Fei's precise calculation. The students looked at Gu Fei quietly. Finally, one of them mustered up the courage and said, "Teacher, although this is a game, it's not good to litter. I endure." Gu Fei could only grit his teeth and swallow it. They were all his students. Was he going to beat them black and blue like he was dealing with a hooligan? Gu Fei could not be so ruthless, so he used this move. In the end, the students thought that he was littering. His good intentions were not rewarded. "Teacher, are we still going?" The soldier student said. "But if I'm not polite, don't blame me for being ruthless." Gu Fei had to prove his kung fu. Beating people in the game did not hurt much anyway. He rolled up the sleeves of his dark spirit robe and prepared to fight for real. "Ha, teacher, don't go easy on me." The boy looked much more confident than Gu Fei. As soon as he finished speaking, the student's head was already flipped upside down. He felt a sharp pain on the bridge of his nose. He looked down in a daze. Gu Fei's fist had just retracted from his eyelids. Gu Fei looked at him and said, "Focus." Ah. The boy didn't even have time to react before he took a punch head-on. He only saw Gu Fei's second punch flying towards him. The guy didn't even try to dodge. Instead he waved the great sword in his hand and slashed towards Gu Fei's head. Gu Fei had already expected that with his skill level, he would use this kind of crude fighting method that would harm himself while injuring the enemy. Of course, Gu Fei wouldn't let him succeed. This punch was a feint. After luring the sword out, Gu Fei took a step forward and dodged the incoming sword. At the same time, Gu Fei's punch landed on his shoulder. Gu Fei was kind and did not want to beat the student into a pulp. The two punches from the mage did not hurt the warrior at all. The boy's sword missed and he wanted to continue attacking. However, he did not expect that Gu Fei was standing in a very tricky position. He could only swing his sword halfway when his arm could no longer twist. And Gu Fei seemed to have known this would happen. When the boy's sword could no longer swing, he smiled at him and flicked the boy's head with his finger. What happened next made the students, who were completely amateurs, realize how terrifying Gu Fei was. The boy's sword couldn't even touch Gu Fei. If you said that Gu Fei was running and he was chasing, it would be easy to understand. But Gu Fei was right beside him, sometimes to the left, sometimes to the right, sometimes to the front, sometimes to the back. He dodged according to the direction of the boy's sword and counterattacked. The boy did not know how many punches he had taken. If Gu Fei had a weapon in his hand, he would have died a long time ago. It was only because he was bare-handed that he was able to hold on for so long. However, after taking so many punches, even a blockhead would know that he wouldn't be able to defeat the person in front of him. However, the audience was no longer limited to students. Many players who were passing by had stopped to watch this unique duel. This left the boy at a loss as to what to do. He could only continue to swing the sword in his hand mechanically. Even he himself knew that his swings were all for naught. Gu Fei looked at the boy's confused face and could not help but laugh. He waved his hand and poked the boy's head again. Then he jumped out of the fight and said with a smile, "Are you done?" The boy touched his head. He was completely shocked and could not answer. The other students were also stunned for a long time. Then, they suddenly surrounded him and shouted, "Teacher, teach me!" Gu Fei finally achieved the desired effect and was extremely satisfied. He immediately put on airs and said, "If you have this kind of skill, do you still need levels?" "No need, no need." The students all rushed to answer. After Gu Fei laughed, he changed his attitude. Actually, levels are still very necessary. If you don't have the support of levels, you won't be able to use such fast moves. Then what should we do? The students were at a loss. Levels are the foundation. Kung Fu is the technique. After Gu Fei thought about it, he felt that this was a reasonable summary. Then should we go level or learn Kung Fu? The students were puzzled. Learn Kung Fu? That's too arrogant. Do you think that this is like leveling in a game? Do you think it will only take 3 to 5 months? Gu Fei said. It will take as long as 3 to 5 months? The students exclaimed. Gu Fei's face turned cold. These kids felt that 3 to 5 months was too long. He had been training since he was young. Even now, he was still tirelessly working hard to improve himself. The holidays are only a month. The students said gloomily. Gu Fei also sighed. That's right. Even if ordinary people wanted to learn Kung Fu, they didn't have the time or the conditions. If he was a child, he had to go through 9 years of compulsory education and high school exams. He wouldn't even need to talk about Kung Fu. You guys don't have the conditions to learn Kung Fu. However, I can teach you some combat techniques. At least I can help you deal with monsters and PK in the game. Gu Fei said. Then hurry up and start. The students shouted. Let's go to the wilderness. Gu Fei waved his hand and led the students away. In the wilderness, Gu Fei carried a small monster and taught the students on the spot. Technique, this really was technique. This was what Gu Fei found when he was fighting monsters. He used his vicious eyes to observe the attack patterns of these small NPC monsters. Thinking back to the time when he was second on the efficiency leaderboard, it wasn't an undeserved reputation. Gu Fei used his talent to discover a way to fight monsters that far surpassed the average player. Even old veterans like Sword Demon definitely didn't have this level of skill. And the small NPC monsters were excellent teaching models. Their movements were meticulous and they would respawn immediately after being destroyed. At this time, the students sat neatly in 2 rows. As if they were in a physical education class, they watched as Gu Fei demonstrated how to break down the monster. When facing this kind of attack, the first step is to turn sideways and take a step to the right. Distance. Look clearly at the distance of this step. Everyone remember it. Gu Fei used a backhand slash to kill the small monster. Then, he repeated the action of turning sideways and taking a step to the right. Okay, everyone get up and follow me. Gu Fei said as he clapped his hands for the students to stand up. Turn sideways. Take a step to the right. Pay attention to the distance. After Gu Fei finished, he came back to check on the students' step and corrected a few of their mistakes. Yes, that's it. Do it again. Turn sideways and take a step to the right. Not bad. Gu Fei was completely immersed in teaching. The next step is counterattack. The counterattack will be slightly different. This depends on what kind of weapon you are using. You need to practice it specifically. Everyone, divide into groups according to your class. Clerics can be in a group with mages. Archers. If archers want to play shooting, go back and practice Counter-Strike. Okay, after dividing into groups, everyone practice the first step. I will teach each group how to counterattack one by one. Then, according to the length of the weapon and the way of attack, Gu Fei taught the students how to counterattack one by one. Okay, now that everyone has grasped the counterattack, let's do the 2 parts of the action together. There is a detail that everyone must pay attention to. It is the connection between the first and second step. It is divided into 2 steps for the convenience of everyone's practice. In fact, these 2 steps should be done in one go. More accurately, we should not call it 2 steps. If everyone still counts the first and second steps in a real battle, it will be terrible. For the next connecting practice, everyone must give up the habit of counting the first and second steps and complete the 2 parts of the action as a whole. Is everyone clear? Clear, the students replied in a drawl. Okay, keep to the groups. I will first lead the warrior group to practice. The other groups can try it out by themselves. Gu Fei said as he went to practice with the warrior group. After leading the warrior group to practice a few times and instructing them to continue practicing by themselves, Gu Fei ran to the thief group and followed the mage group. Okay, now everyone use your own method to practice together. Gu Fei stood at the front of the group and gave instructions, correcting the students' questions from time to time. Teacher, we are very familiar with each other. Let's practice with the monsters. Gradually, some of the students who had mastered it began to look forward to the actual battle. Are they all cooked? Gu Fei asked. He dragged his voice again. In that case. Gu Fei thought for a moment, then pointed at Uff and said, bring a few people to lure 4 monsters back. Send one to each group. Each group will send one person to practice with the monster. The others will observe carefully and see if he is doing it correctly. If there is any danger, remember to quickly finish off the monster. The students began practicing with the monsters according to Gu Fei's instructions. In the beginning, there were indeed many accidents, but as the practice deepened, everyone gradually became familiar with this method of fighting. Gu Fei saw that it was about time and suddenly killed all 4 monsters. He clapped his hands to gather everyone and began his lesson. Just now, everyone has probably realized that this method is actually the most common way to deal with small monsters. In fact, small monsters will occasionally use other kinds of attacks. I realized that most of the students would choose to endure the other kinds of attacks and wait for the small monsters to return to this kind of attack. As Gu Fei spoke, he pointed at 3 students. Wang Shuangshuang, Zhang Fan, and Hu Yong did well. They noticed the other monsters' other attacks and can also use this method to avoid and counterattack. However, they will need to make some changes. Next, let me demonstrate. After a whole 2 hours, Gu Fei finally finished teaching the entire set of methods to fight these level 30 small monsters. The students' comprehension and athletic talents were different, so their mastery of the method was uneven. However, there was only so much theoretical knowledge. The rest would depend on whether the students practiced diligently. Alright, today's lesson ends here. You will use this method to level up. In tomorrow's lesson, we will learn the level 35 One-Eyed Hunter. One-Eyed Hunters have higher agility. Characters who have not added agility above level 20 will not be able to use this method, so you don't have to come. These students will learn the level 35 Lumberjack from me the day after tomorrow. It's a method that doesn't require high agility. Gu Fei summarized the day and previewed the content of the next lesson. Teacher? Immediately, a student objected. It was characters who have not added agility above level 20. Then won't we have to practice a day late? Yeah, after tomorrow, they will be fighting level 35 monsters. We still have to fight level 30 monsters for the whole day. Right, teacher? Since there is a method to fight level 35 monsters, why don't we just learn it? Why do we have to learn level 30? You haven't even learned how to walk and you want to run? Don't you know how to advance step by step? Don't you see that many students are having a hard time fighting level 30 monsters? Gu Fei said. Of course it's hard. They haven't even reached level 10 yet. A student mumbled. In reality, it wasn't just hard. These students couldn't fight at all. If it weren't for the help of others, they would have died countless times during their practice. Gu Fei gathered these students in front of him and said sincerely, "Look, you guys are the typical examples of low levels. Your foundation isn't solid enough. There's no other way. You can only work hard and quickly raise your level in these 2 days. Only then can you practice with everyone else. Otherwise, you can only watch everyone practice while you guys get experience. Isn't that boring?" "No, I think this is pretty good," a student replied with a mischievous smile. "If you don't have the will to improve, you won't have a future." Gu Fei looked at him with disdain. Seeing the students use the techniques he taught to kill monsters, Gu Fei felt a sense of accomplishment. However, he didn't forget his own position. After looking at the time, he called out to the students, "Okay, everyone will practice this method for another hour. You can go offline and rest." Teacher, don't, it's the holidays now." The students wailed. "Even if it's the holidays, you can't play too much. Go offline and rest. Read some books and eat dinner. After dinner, you can come back and play for a while. Don't play too late and don't pull an all-night. Sleep early and wake up early. Tomorrow's class is in the morning. If you don't come, it will be considered truancy." Teacher is too much." The students cried. "Teacher, I have something to do tomorrow morning. Can I not come?" A student came over and asked. "Sure, Then don't go online for a day and do your work. If it's just in the morning, take a leave of absence and ask your parents to sign it. Gu Fei said. The students cried. Teacher, you won't let us play, but you play so fiercely yourself. The students protested. I will keep the same schedule as everyone else. Everyone can also monitor me. Gu Fei said. The students cried. So what if we monitor you? It's not like we can record your attendance or deduct your conduct. Okay, don't be so long-winded. In the time it takes to talk, you can kill quite a few monsters. You'll soon find out. If you use the method I teach, practicing for an hour is enough. If you practice again at night, it'll be even better. Gu Fei said. The students were skeptical, but since things had come to this, there was no other way. They could only search for monsters under Gu Fei's supervision to level up. Gu Fei walked among the students, freeloading off the EXP the students gave him, while occasionally correcting the students' mistakes. When he was in a good mood, he would personally demonstrate a few difficult techniques so that the students with high comprehension could continue to improve. The hour passed by quickly. After they were done with their training, the students were surprised to find that it was just as Gu Fei had said. The efficiency of this hour was incredible. It was at least 2 to 3 hours more than they normally would. It's that abnormal? The students were astonished. What's so special about it? A student skillfully demonstrated what he learned today. If we can practice like this for an entire day. A student thought, but Gu Fei's gaze was already on him. He hurriedly lowered his head and swallowed his words. Form up, return to the city. Gu Fei shouted. The students dilly-dallied and reluctantly formed the team for 10 minutes. During this time, they killed a few monsters. Gu Fei didn't feel too conflicted. He let the students form the team and led everyone back to the city. Hey, old son and the others didn't come today. What a loss. On the way back, the students chatted happily, feeling sorry for those who didn't make it in time. Those who didn't come, you can give each other pointers. Gu Fei reminded everyone. But the students nodded obediently. At the revival point, Gu Fei escorted the students offline one by one. The students cried again. This teacher was the last to go offline. Who knew if he went offline or not? Should they do a surprise check? If they really bumped into him, he would most likely say that he caught them and brought them back to play the game. In reality, Gu Fei wasn't as shameless as the students thought. After seeing that the students had all gone offline, he did as he said and left the game. Just like that, the ones who suffered the most were Jianan Yu and the others. Jianan Yu now had Gu Fei as a friend. When they saw that Gu Fei was online, the 7 of them acted as if they were facing a great enemy. They paid 120% of their attention to their surroundings, afraid that a flame would descend from the sky or a black shadow would suddenly appear in front of them. Anything red or black would make the 7 of them shudder. However, what was even more painful was that from the time Gu Fei went online to the time he went offline, everyone was shocked and jumped, but nothing happened. What the hell is this guy doing? The 7 of them were vexed. The buyer of the staff hasn't shown up for another day. The auction house was still observing. However, Jianan Yu and the others had already recognized their peers who were eyeing the staff. As long as their peers made a move, it definitely wouldn't escape their eyes. Chapter 594. For the next few days, Gu Fei did as he promised and taught his students how to fight against monsters of different levels. These fighting methods could not be considered kung fu. They could only be considered as regular fighting methods after figuring out the attacking habits of the monsters. Each fighting method was extremely effective against the small monsters. If it was another enemy that followed this train of thought, the only outcome would be death. Of course, if one's brain was more flexible and knew how to draw inferences about other cases from one instance and be able to read the meaning of these fighting methods, then it would be a different matter. However, this was not something that a layman could do. One had to be an expert in kung fu to be able to do so. Gu Fei's students were smart enough to adjust the original fighting method of stepping left and striking right according to the specific situation to step right and strike left. This was already their limit. This small change could be considered sharp against a computer that was strict with its moves, but it was far from enough to be used in actual combat. Even so, the results were enough to surprise Gu Fei. He had never seen students with such high enthusiasm for learning. If the first day of learning was a little forced, then after tasting the sweetness of the fighting method taught by Gu Fei, the students began to learn to take the initiative. Many of them flipped through the information and researched the small monsters that they needed to fight. Then they came over to ask Gu Fei how to deal with these monsters. Gu Fei's path of leveling was mainly about wanted missions. Killing monsters was just for show. In fact, there were not many types of small monsters that he had killed. The few types that he taught the students were all monsters that he had encountered on his way to leveling. That was why he had developed such a mature fighting method. At this time, many of the students asked about the small monsters that Gu Fei had not even heard of. How was he supposed to answer? After saying that he was not too sure, the students were very disappointed. Gu Fei did not think much of it at first, but then he happened to hear the students talking in private. They actually thought that the teacher's kung fu was nothing special. This made Gu Fei very depressed. He did not know. It was just because he was not familiar with these small monsters. However, the students misunderstood that the teacher's kung fu could not do it. What a joke! When it came to fighting, was there anything that the kung fu could not handle? Gu Fei was obsessed with kung fu. After the student logged off that day, Gu Fei immediately contacted Brother Yu and asked about the information and distribution of the 4 types of monsters that the student had asked about that day. Gu Fei then immediately rushed to the leveling area to do some actual combat research. The next day, after teaching the content of fighting monsters for the day, Gu Fei solemnly taught the 4 ways to fight the monsters that he had just researched yesterday to the 4 students who asked him questions. He clearly conveyed a message to them. This kind of thing was easy to do, the key was whether they were willing to do it or not. The results were mixed. What made them happy was that the 4 students gasped in admiration on the spot, thinking that martial arts were indeed omnipotent. The worrisome thing was that on that day, 6 more students asked about 6 different ways to fight the monsters. Gu Fei felt as if he had fallen into a trap, and this trap was set by himself. He could only blame himself for his obsession with kung fu. Even so, this obsession did not lessen Gu Fei's obsession. Gu Fei continued to teach the 6 ways to fight the monsters until the next day. After the students logged off that day, Gu Fei asked Brother Yu for information and rushed to the leveling area to do some research. This feeling was like preparing for a lesson. On the 3rd day, after teaching the 6 types of monsters, Gu Fei guessed that there would be new questions. Sure enough, on that day, 6 more students asked about the 6 types of monsters, and they did not speak much. It was as if they knew that Gu Fei would definitely not give an answer until the next day. After throwing the question to Gu Fei, they automatically disappeared. Damn! Gu Fei felt as if he was on a quest. These students were NPCs who gave him quests. 6 a day, it was like a daily routine. Are you busy? Gu Fei turned around and called Brother Yu. Hey, you're here. I've been waiting. What questions do you want to ask today? Brother Yu was not annoyed at all. He loved it when people asked him questions. In fact, what Gu Fei was doing now was Brother Yu's hobby. Today is... Gu Fei sent the names of the 6 types of monsters over. I'll help you check. Brother Yu opened his omnipotent encyclopedia. As he looked, he sent a message to Gu Fei. I say, what are you busy with? 4 types the day before yesterday, 6 types yesterday, and another 6 today. I've written them all down for you. Are you doing some research? Not only did Brother Yu like people asking him questions, but he also loved asking questions. This time, he actually waited until the 3rd day to ask. He was already being polite to Gu Fei. You want to know? Come with me. Gu Fei replied. Okay. Brother Yu was obviously not annoyed. Gu Fei was even less annoyed. He always had to go to the library to look up information or take the library with him. If possible, he would definitely choose the latter. The 2 arranged to meet. When Brother Yu arrived, he had already found out everything that Gu Fei needed. What Gu Fei needed to know were the monsters' levels, attack methods, and distribution locations. This is what you want. Brother Yu was very meticulous. The 6 types of monsters that Gu Fei asked about were listed on a piece of paper. When he saw Gu Fei at the city gate, he immediately handed it over. "Thank you." Gu Fei took it and looked at it. "If we go out from here, we'll be closest to the wilderness visitor." Brother Yu pointed at the 3rd type of monster on the paper. "Okay." Gu Fei nodded. "Tell me, why do you ask about so many monsters every day?" Brother Yu asked as he led the way. "I'm researching how to fight these monsters." Gu Fei said. "Then why do you research so much?" Brother Yu was curious. Some of the monsters that Gu Fei asked about were very low level. They weren't suitable for him, who was already over level 40. Gu Fei sighed and told him about his group of students coming to White Stone City to join him. Although Brother Yu already knew that Gu Fei was a teacher, it was still embarrassing for a teacher to bring students to play online games. However, at this moment, Brother Yu was more concerned about the efficient way to fight these monsters that Gu Fei said he was researching. "How efficient?" Brother Yu asked. "Did you forget that I was ranked 2nd on the efficiency leaderboard?" Gu Fei felt that he didn't need any specific data. This was enough to convince Brother Yu. "That's right. I still remember that the one who ranked 1st on the efficiency leaderboard was that Hongchen Yixiao. A cleric actually ranked 1st on the leveling efficiency leaderboard. That's too shocking. Speaking of which, didn't this guy keep saying that he wanted to reconcile with you? A while ago, he was always looking for trouble with us, but recently there hasn't been any movement. Also, this guy is clearly from the game company. I complained to them and they said that they're investigating, but there hasn't been any response. How strange. Do you think that they've already investigated and banned this guy? No wonder there hasn't been any movement for so long. Right? Don't you have him as a friend? Has he been online these past few days?" Brother Yu looked at Gu Fei and asked. However, he saw that Gu Fei was also looking at him with a speechless face. Gu Fei even stopped walking. Brother Yu is Brother Yu, thinking a lot. We're off topic. What were we talking about? Brother Yu awkwardly laughed at himself. "The method I've developed to fight monsters is absolutely efficient. You can learn it later and try it yourself. Hongchen Yixiao is from the game company. When I first met him, he admitted it himself. I think it should be true. Also, this guy has been online these past few days, but he hasn't replied to any of my messages." Gu Fei answered everything that Brother Yu had just mentioned in one breath. Brother Yu laughed dryly. For a moment, he was too embarrassed to reply to Gu Fei's words. The place where the wilderness visitors gathered wasn't far from the main city. The two casually chatted for a while before they saw the figure of this type of monster on the map. "This monster is level 25, you have to go easy on it." Brother Yu reminded Gu Fei. Gu Fei smiled and nodded. When he took his hand out of his pocket, he was holding a dagger. You want to use a dagger?" The kid asking how to fight this monster is a thief. "Of course, I want to learn how to fight with a dagger," Gu Fei said. Oh. Brother Yu quickly nodded. In the end, he very selfishly asked, "Then which monster is the knight asking about?" Gu Fei saw through his thoughts and smiled. "Brother Yu, if you want to learn which monster to fight, just tell me. Since it's convenient for me these past few days, I'll help you study it. I just want to try the efficiency of killing monsters that you mentioned." Brother Yu smiled foolishly. "You'll see." Gu Fei pointed at the 4th monster on the paper. "This kid is a knight. I'm looking forward to it," Brother Yu said. In the end, they didn't waste time chatting. Gu Fei immediately took the dagger and fought the monster. Brother Yu watched from the side, dumbfounded. Fortunately, he already knew that Qianli was an invincible close combat mage. If he really saw a mage fight a monster with a dagger, wouldn't his heart stop beating? Brother Yu was an adult after all. His understanding was better than a child's. Moreover, he had personally witnessed the entire process of Gu Fei's research. He understood Gu Fei's thinking. It was to understand all of the monster's attack and defense methods, and then create a set of attacks that could be followed. The most exciting part was when Gu Fei tested the monster. The endless attack methods dazzled Brother Yu. He guessed that after watching Gu Fei's performance, he would never be attracted to exciting fighting scenes in action movies again. On the contrary, the content of the later development was more boring. It was just repeated experiments, and if there was a mistake, they would have to start from the beginning again. This process continued until Brother Yu was a little tired of it, but Gu Fei still persisted in trying. The fighting methods that he had taught his students were all things that he had unintentionally discovered while repeatedly fighting monsters. Now that he was doing research like writing a thesis, it was naturally very boring. In the end, Brother Yu finally saw that he had finally succeeded. After a set of attacks, not only did the monster not touch Gu Fei, but the moves of both sides became a cycle. As long as these movements were carried out step by step, the monster would inevitably fall. Too awesome! Brother Yu's mouth was wide open. The things that Gu Fei had developed were even more terrifying than he had imagined. This was no longer just about efficiency. If he could completely grasp Gu Fei's methods, more importantly, it would be safe. There would be no consumption of his own body. This fighting method was really economical and practical. Gu Fei tried it on 5 monsters in a row. After confirming that there were no problems, he gave up. He nodded towards Brother Yu and said, "Okay, let's go to the next one." "How did you do it?" Brother Yu worshipped Gu Fei to death. "That's why I said that Kung Fu can be summed up in one word." "Okay." Gu Fei clenched his fist. "Later, I'll also pick a monster that I often fight. Help me study it." Brother Yu said. "No problem." Gu Fei nodded. "Do you want to ask Sword Demon and the others if they want to learn a thing or two?" Brother Yu asked. They don't need to. The training methods that they've figured out are already very suitable for them, especially since they can fully utilize their own characteristics and the advantages of their equipment. If they want to learn a more efficient method, then there's one, but what? It's too difficult. They need to have a foundation. Gu Fei said. "How difficult is it?" "Like me, fighting monsters that are 20 levels higher than me. Although I can also practice a similar method, the requirements for my own reaction speed are very high. Another point is that there's an absolute requirement for agility. I don't think you guys are like me, adding agility to any class, right?" Gu Fei said. "Impossible." Brother Yu wiped his sweat. "That's why I said that they don't need to anymore." Gu Fei said. "What about me?" Brother Yu asked. "Brother Yu, you know your own problems the best." Gu Fei said. Brother Yu was startled and felt very depressed. Gu Fei very tactfully told him, "You're not on the same level as them. You really need me to teach you a lesson about your actual combat level." After that, Brother Yu followed Gu Fei to visit a few types of monsters and witnessed the performance of Gu Fei's various weapons. Even the priest's healing staff was waved vigorously by him. But after they finished, he awkwardly explained to Brother Yu, "My methods are mainly for close combat. The priest class is really awkward. Mages can also chant spells to deal damage in close combat, but priests have almost no attack skills, so their damage output is really limited. Most people can't add strength. Sigh, even if they learn this method, the word efficiency can't be used." "You can't say that." Brother Yu hurriedly said. "You can't compare the efficiency of a priest and a warrior. You have to compare this problem horizontally. With this priest method of yours, you can just change it to another priest and have him train alone. Your method will definitely be more efficient. Apart from the short period of time when a priest can train alone, in the future, they will definitely need to rely on a team. Even if they only rely on quests to level up when it comes to combat, they will still need to ask for help. With this method of yours, they can at least become a priest who doesn't need help." Yes, a priest with a team is indeed more efficient. But speaking of which, how do you think Gongzi, such an annoying guy, can find a leveling team to guarantee such a high level? Gu Fei occasionally gossiped. Nowadays, a 10-person leveling team needs 2 priests to ensure absolute safety. But Gongzi can heal alone without any mistakes. 1 less priest means 1 more damage output. Everyone wants a priest of this level. So what if they hate him? Experience is more important. Brother Yu said. Sigh, public morals are degenerating day by day. Gu Fei sighed. Everything was based on experience. This was very similar to how everything in reality was based on money. No matter how virtual the game was, people's values were still the same. Chapter 595. By the time they finished researching the 6 types of monsters, the afternoon was already over. Gu Fei's face was filled with a sense of accomplishment. Brother Yu's notebook was filled with notes. My students' levels are low. This knight isn't even level 30 yet, so the monsters they chose are level 30. They're too low for you. Go back and see which level 40 monster you want to train. Let me know and I'll help you research. Gu Fei said to Brother Yu. Why are we going back? Let's go. Brother Yu said impatiently. Gu Fei looked at the time. There was still some time before the students would come online after dinner. Gu Fei had been painstakingly teaching the students for the past 2 days. After all, it was impossible for the students to grasp everything perfectly after 2 hours of lessons. Gu Fei spent the rest of the time training with them, correcting everyone's mistakes. During the students' rest time, he had to come over to prepare for lessons. Originally, after preparing for lessons, he could rest for a while, but now he had to give Brother Yu extra lessons. Fortunately, Brother Yu only needed 1 day of lessons. There wouldn't be new problems every day. After nodding his head, Gu Fei decided to sacrifice today's rest time to help Brother Yu. What level do you think I can fight? Brother Yu asked. What level do you usually fight? Gu Fei asked. Level 45, but the efficiency of farming experience is about the same as fighting level 40. Brother Yu said. Players that were 5 levels higher were the choice for solo leveling. A skilled and powerful team could usually do it 10 levels higher. Players like Skinny Waist, who had overpowered equipment, could also do it 10 levels higher when solo leveling. Gu Fei, who was an inhuman monster, could do it 20 levels higher. This didn't mean that a level 40 player could kill a level 50 monster. If it was just killing monsters, players with decent equipment could do it, but the key was to ensure the efficiency of killing monsters. With the same amount of EXP, players could kill 2 level 40 monsters per minute, but they could only kill 1 level 50 monster per minute. Moreover, level 50 monsters couldn't possibly give twice as much EXP as level 40 monsters. Hence, in terms of EXP, killing level 40 monsters wasn't as easy as killing level 40 monsters. Therefore, killing monsters at this level was not considered skipping levels. In order to truly surpass one's level, one must have the experience of being a level higher. For example, Brother Yu, who was 5 levels higher than him but was still as efficient as a level 40 player, could only be considered half a level higher. However, EXP wasn't the only thing that could be gained from killing monsters. In terms of loot, the higher the level of the monster, the better the loot. Therefore, even though the EXP gained from killing level 40 and level 45 monsters was the same for Brother Yu, he was more willing to work harder to kill level 45 monsters. Even Gu Fei understood this principle very well. The two of them didn't waste any more words. Immediately, Brother Yu led the way to his usual leveling spot. In reality, leveling up for knights was the same as leveling for clerics. Forming a team was the most efficient way. However, after level 40, Dark Knights possessed powerful destructive power. After changing classes to Diablo, the former support knights all had the heart to deal damage. Hence, when leveling up with a team, they didn't carefully buff everyone. Instead, they bravely charged to the front lines. This kind of half-heartedness was, of course, very displeasing. After all, most players in charge of dealing damage thought of themselves as masters and treated the support classes as servants. As servants, instead of serving their masters, they actually rushed to steal their jobs. How could these masters tolerate this? Moreover, the knight class was simply an accelerator. Without a knight, the players would just slow down their leveling speed. It wasn't a big deal. Moreover, there were many girls in the cleric army. This was an innate advantage that knights couldn't compare to. Hence, as a support class, knights were treated far worse than clerics. Now that knights had changed classes to Diablo, they had the strength to train solo. When leveling up with a team, no one would give them any face. Knights also took out the airs of a master and would no longer compromise. They all walked towards the era of solo adventuring. However, Brother Yu didn't belong to this situation. As the king of intelligence, Brother Yu mainly leveled up by completing quests. Occasionally, he would join a team and farm monsters. Now that he had the idea of mainly farming monsters, it had to be said that it was influenced by the environment. In the team that Brother Yu was in, there was no need to talk about the killing Gu Fei. The rest of them were also characters that could take charge of an area. Even the most unmotivated person would inevitably want to improve themselves in such a team. Brother Yu also gradually felt that it was embarrassing to always slack off during battles. Currently, the monsters that Brother Yu frequently farmed were the bonfire patrols in the White Stone City Wilderness Camp. They were level 44, 46, warrior class, and their weapons were one-handed swords. At the same time, they also carried a torch, which was also a powerful weapon in battle. When hit, it would cause a burning effect that would continuously reduce one's HP. It was very disgusting. Although it was disgusting, it was already a relatively good choice for solo leveling level 45 monsters. The setting of the game was obviously to encourage players to form teams. The higher the level of the monsters, the more they would live in groups. For example, those monsters that formed groups of 3 to 5 and had a chain of aggro were very difficult to farm, let alone those of a higher level. Fortunately, the game company didn't completely forget about those lone wolves who liked to train alone. They more or less created some small monsters that were suitable for solo leveling. The bonfire patrols were one of them. Moreover, they were the favorite choice of ordinary players in the level 40-50 stage. This could be seen from the scene in front of him that there were indeed many players training in the wilderness camp. However, they all fought for themselves, guarding their own little space and quietly farming monsters. The reason why there were so many players who had the ability to solo monsters 5 levels higher was because of the difficulty of leveling up in the game. The high EXP requirement caused players to stay at the same stage for a very long time. If it was said that when they first leveled up, their equipment was relatively trash. However, after such a long time, a considerable number of players would be able to upgrade their equipment. The advantage of pioneers was precisely weakened by this setting. The higher the level, the more it was so. Let's find a place to start? Gu Fei said to Brother Yu. The two of them walked into the camp, looking for an unoccupied corner. Brother Yu had come here many times in the past 2 days, but he had never been here at this time. He had learned from the Han family young master and waited until the dead of night when there were fewer players online to level up. Therefore, he had never encountered this kind of problem. The two of them had already walked half a circle, but there was actually no place left. Gu Fei was very helpless, and Brother Yu was very depressed. What should we do? Gu Fei asked. Brother Yu hoped that Gu Fei would instantly clear out an empty space. However, he also knew that although Gu Fei was a ruthless person, he was not an unreasonable person. He could only sigh and say, "Let's walk a little more. If there's really nothing left, let's come back next time." But Gu Fei responded and continued to look for a place. In the end, they did not find a place, but there were many players like them who were looking for a place. Therefore, Gu Fei began to take the initiative. He asked around if the players who were training were ready to leave. However, this behavior did not seem to be very popular. The players who were asked harshly said that they would train until they died. However, there were still good people in the world. Gu Fei and Brother Yu asked around. Everyone saw that they were eager to level up. Finally, someone took pity on them and took the initiative to wave at them. "Hey, you two over here." The two of them looked at each other. After confirming that the person was calling them, they immediately ran over happily. "I'll be offline in a bit to eat," the player said to the two of them. Thank you. The two of them quickly said. "You two are training together?" The person asked curiously. This was a famous solo training spot in White Stone City. Unless one of them was a freeloader, the two people in front of them were clearly 40+ EXP players. "We're not training. We're using monsters for research," Gu Fei said honestly. "Research?" The player was confused. "Researching efficient methods of killing monsters," Gu Fei said. The player was obviously interested in Gu Fei's words. He asked with great interest, "How do you research?" "You have to get monsters." Gu Fei laughed. At this time, There were no monsters spawning in this player's little world. In such a popular leveling spot, wanting to occupy a large area and continuously kill monsters was an extravagant hope. It was already good to have 2 or 3 monsters spawning for you to guard. Most players only guarded one, so there was no need to mention how difficult it was. This place is about to spawn. Research one for me to see. The player smiled and pointed at the empty space in front of him. He said to Gu Fei. But Gu Fei unsheathed his sword. Sword? The player's eyeballs almost fell out. A mage used a sword. He quickly thought of a terrifying legend. He quickly used identify and his eyeballs really did fall out. The sword in Gu Fei's hand was an extremely ordinary one-handed sword. He had casually gotten it when he was preparing for class. Gu Fei didn't want the monsters to die too quickly. He wanted to play with the monsters for as long as possible. With a flash of white light, the monsters spawned. Gu Fei rolled up his sleeves and smiled at the kind-hearted player. Let's begin. After saying this, he struck out with his sword and attacked the monsters. The player opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he couldn't say anything. Brother Yu laughed at the side. This was the reaction a normal player should have when they saw a mage wielding a sword and fighting monsters in close combat. However, it was too early for him to be so shocked. The most exciting part was yet to come. The exciting attack that made Brother Yu feel like he had returned from Mount Huangshan finally began. Brother Yu watched as the player's expression changed from shock, to very shock, to extreme shock, to extreme shock. The player had already lost the ability to speak. He pointed at Gu Fei and gestured to Brother Yu. It was obvious that he wanted to ask something, but he couldn't form the words for a moment. Brother Yu smiled mysteriously. He realized that having a friend like Gu Fei was really something to be proud of. What do you mean by that? The player finally said something. This. Brother Yu was about to say a few words when he suddenly heard a series of exclamations. The surrounding players were attracted by Gu Fei's fight. They stopped what they were doing and looked over. Some of them had even given up on their own little world to stand closer and get a clearer view. Damn, it seems like I'm a little too proud, Brother Yu thought. Chapter 596. The screams continued. Brother Yu was completely drowned in Gu Fei's face. The levels of the students were relatively low. The highest level of the monsters that asked Gu Fei was only level 35. Gu Fei dealt with them quite easily. Now that he was facing a level 45 monster, his attention was naturally more focused. Those probing moves could only be faster and more exciting, causing the crowd to scream louder and louder. Brother Yu was completely insignificant in the midst of these screams. No one had the time to notice that he was Gu Fei's friend. A guy standing next to Brother Yu had a loud and clear voice. As he cheered, he grabbed Brother Yu and said, "This guy is so handsome. He must have practiced. So cool." "Yeah. He practiced," Brother Yu said. "Good." That guy was probably just looking for a random target to express his feelings. He didn't care whether Brother Yu was a human or a ghost. After saying that, he immediately turned his head and cheered. Gu Fei was also quite surprised to cause such a commotion, but he didn't pay much attention to it. Did he have to stop and persuade these people to disperse? If they wanted to watch, they could watch. It wasn't a big deal. Gu Fei didn't mind at all. He seriously tried to figure out the attack and defense patterns of the bonfire patrol, and came up with an effective strategy. Brother Yu had followed Gu Fei to prepare for the afternoon's lesson. He knew that this exciting process wouldn't be too long. It would last for about 10 minutes. As expected, after fighting with the monster for about 10 minutes, Gu Fei had already figured out the monster's attack rhythm and methods. Therefore, every hit landed on its flesh. Although Gu Fei had tried his best not to knock it down, he had still been fighting for 10 minutes. The small number of hits had accumulated to take away most of the monster's HP. Now that it received a few hits, it quickly fell to the ground. Gu Fei let out a long sigh of relief. He even smiled at the players who were cheering for the monster's death. He then looked around, but he could not find Brother Yu no matter how hard he tried. "Where is he?" Gu Fei sent a message. Brother Yu's voice came from the crowd. Then, he struggled to squeeze out of the crowd and let out a long breath. As the crowd grew denser and denser, he was sandwiched in the middle. He almost couldn't breathe. The two met in front of everyone. Brother Yu felt uncomfortable being stared at by so many eyes. However, he saw that Gu Fei acted as if nothing had happened. He continued his work and calmly said to Brother Yu, "The moves are clear. We can go next." "Now?" Brother Yu asked. There were so many people watching. He didn't do anything wrong, but Brother Yu subconsciously felt a little guilty. "Then how much longer do we have to wait?" Gu Fei didn't understand. "We don't have to wait. You continue." Brother Yu gritted his teeth and went all out. Gu Fei was in the limelight so easily. Why did a small character like him have to pretend to be weak? Gu Fei nodded and quietly waited for the new monster to spawn. The surrounding players could also see that he was waiting for the monster to spawn. No one said anything and quietly waited for the next performance. The previous fight had left everyone wanting more. Everyone had already forgotten that they were playing a game. "I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you this time." Brother Yu smiled bitterly. Because he knew that what Gu Fei was going to do next was not only not exciting, it would be very boring. It would be a constant repetition of some fixed attack and defense moves. These moves were picked out by Gu Fei in the first wave of testing. In fact, these were the essence. However, as the saying goes, the connoisseur knows the ropes. The amateurs wanted to see the excitement. What Gu Fei was going to do next was, of course, the crowd that loved excitement the most didn't want to watch. Sure enough, when Gu Fei first started, everyone was still very excited. However, they soon discovered that this time was not the same as before. That spectacular and suffocating torrential storm of attacks had disappeared. Gu Fei very politely blamed you, then I, and kept using the same moves over and over again. Very soon, everyone had more or less memorized it, and it was so boring that they couldn't help but feel bored. The players abandoned their excitement and returned to reality. They began to wonder what Gu Fei was doing. Everyone whispered to each other, but they couldn't come to any conclusion. The kind-hearted player who provided Gu Fei and Brother Yu with the location to farm monsters came to Brother Yu's side. He was also very puzzled and asked, "Brother, what is he doing?" His goal is to research a set of the most effective way to fight against the Bonfire Patrol. Just now he was testing out the attack and defense characteristics of this monster. Now he's really researching how to deal with this monster. Brother Yu replied. The player was a bit confused. He scratched his head and asked, "When are you guys going down?" "It's still early." Brother Yu said, "Oh, then I'll go eat something. Are you guys still here when I come back?" The player looked at the time and said, Brother Yu nodded. He knew that this process of Gu Fei's wouldn't end so easily. "Okay then, I'll come back in a bit." The person said, "When the time comes, I can return the leveling area to you." Brother Yu smiled. The person actually had the same intention, so he hurriedly left after saying goodbye. The other players patiently watched for a while, but they still didn't see the exciting performance they were looking forward to. Someone shouted for Gu Fei to do it again. Gu Fei just smiled and didn't care. The players saw that there was no more show to watch, so they gradually dispersed. In addition, there were also curious people who wanted to go up and ask what was going on. Gu Fei didn't hide it. He continued to experiment and told those who came over to ask that he was researching an efficient way to fight. Efficiency? That counts as efficiency? The people looked like they heard a joke and laughed as they left. It was obvious that Gu Fei's previous monster killing had been spectacular. However, to the players, it was like watching an exciting martial arts show. If one were to compare killing monsters, then it had taken Gu Fei more than 10 minutes to kill monsters. If this was called efficiency, then it would be a joke. Gu Fei didn't care about these people's attitude and continued to focus on his own matters. After these people left, they would often turn their heads to look at Gu Fei to see if there would be any changes. In the end, all they saw was the same dull and boring scene. Finally, no one paid attention to Gu Fei's actions anymore. Level 45 monsters were obviously harder to deal with than the students' questions. Gu Fei spent about an entire class worth of time before he was able to come up with a strategy to deal with this monster. Brother Yu, who had been watching attentively from the side, knew that Gu Fei was about to succeed and was extremely excited. After a monster fell under Gu Fei's sword, Gu Fei also smiled as if he had harvested the fruit of victory and walked over to Brother Yu. "You did it." Brother Yu hurriedly greeted him and asked. Gu Fei nodded, but said a word that Brother Yu didn't want to hear. But what? Brother Yu was terrified. This monster isn't easy to defeat. It has to have some agility. Have you added any points to agility? Brother Yu was stunned for a moment, then immediately replied, I have added a little. Brother Yu's original way of adding points was to imitate the cleric's support profession, but it was reshuffled after he switched to the Dark Knight profession. As the research on the Dark Knight profession wasn't thorough enough, Brother Yu, who had always been cautious, added a few points that he thought he needed and kept the rest. He was prepared to put them all in when his thoughts were clear. How much did you add? Gu Fei knew the exact number. A little. Brother Yu said. Gu Fei was stunned. Only then did he understand that when Brother Yu said, a little, he was referring to a single point, not a small amount, just a little. A little? What do you mean by a little? Gu Fei was confused. My movement speed is lacking a little, but my agility can be increased by a level, so I added a little. Brother Yu explained. Accurate calculations were Brother Yu's best style. Gu Fei didn't dwell on this issue, but continued his topic. A knight's agility is the same as a mage's, there's no need to modify it, right? Yes, 1-to-1. Brother Yu replied. Gu Fei nodded and said, then if you want to use my method to deal with this monster, you'll have to add a point to agility. At how much? Brother Yu was terrified. He admitted that he didn't have Gu Fei's ability. Trying to imitate Gu Fei's full agility would be like trying to draw a tiger but end up like a dog. So he was very worried that Gu Fei would lead him down the path of a useless account. For me, level 5 agility is enough. For you, I suggest adding 8 to 10 levels. Anyway, the more you add, the safer it will be. The less you add, the harder it will be. Gu Fei said to Brother Yu. That's a lot. Brother Yu was a little conflicted. Should he increase his agility in order to learn Gu Fei's monster fighting techniques before confirming if agility was useful for Dark Knights? Gu Fei also sighed. I know you guys won't add points randomly, but I've already found the lowest requirement. This level 45 monster is too high. It won't work without a certain level of speed as a guarantee. How about this? I'll demonstrate the method to you first, and you can try it on the monster after you memorize it. Add as much agility as you feel is enough. If you really can't bear to, then just practice the usual way. Yes, that's the only way. Brother Yu nodded. He felt that it was better to test it out himself. Alright, then watch carefully. It's a complete demonstration. Gu Fei said. Hee, I've already seen quite a bit. Brother Yu laughed. He had seen the entire process, and had already understood about 70 to 80% of it. Gu Fei continued to use his normal broken sword to attack the monster. A mature method was indeed different. He no longer fought back and forth with the monster. He continuously moved and attacked, dodging the monster's attacks and landing his own sword on the monster's body. Even though this monster wasn't killed quickly, Brother Yu knew that this was due to the limitations of equipment and class. If Gu Fei used the Night Stream Sword and Dual Flame Flash, or if he went up and used his incomplete Dark Knight's damage, then the true efficiency would be displayed. How is it? Do you want to do it again? As the monster fell, Gu Fei asked Brother Yu. It's about time. I'll try it and you correct it. Brother Yu said, be careful, you don't have enough speed right now. Gu Fei said, I understand. Brother Yu said as he went up to pull the monster to practice. He remembered every move of Gu Fei's method very clearly. When he saw the monster hit him with the torch, he immediately moved to the side. In the end, he felt a scorching heat on his shoulder. As expected, his speed was too slow, and he wasn't able to dodge the torch. In the end, he was thwarted on the first move and was unable to continue. To put it simply, Gu Fei's method was a method that specifically targeted monsters. ABC dealt with the monsters 123, And Brother Yu's situation was that he didn't have enough speed. As a result, he could have dealt with the first attack, but he used half of it, so he naturally couldn't avoid being hit. What's worse was that the monster had already used the second attack, and because Brother Yu hadn't finished using the first attack, he couldn't follow up with the second attack. As a result, he took the second attack, followed by 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the monster was beaten up. The pitiful Brother Yu was still stuck with the first attack. In the end, he completely abandoned Gu Fei's method, and used his own bumpkin method to kill the monster. When he turned around to look at Gu Fei, his face was full of shame. "How much agility do you think you're lacking?" Gu Fei asked. Brother Yu couldn't answer. Even though he was good at calculation, he couldn't grasp the finesse in battle. "I'll show you 2 more times. Memorize it," Gu Fei said. "All right." Brother Yu was a bit helpless, and his heart was in a fierce struggle. "Watch carefully." Gu Fei made his move. Brother Yu saw a purple light flash past, and discovered that Gu Fei's dark moonstream sword had appeared. Although he still didn't use any spells, the damage he dealt was on a completely different level compared to the damage dealt by the broken sword from before. In addition, Gu Fei even used several enchantment equipment. This time, he was able to deal with the small monsters with ease. The word efficiency was finally being displayed. "How is it?" Gu Fei laughed. "Damn." Brother Yu was depressed. Although Gu Fei didn't tell him to increase his agility, he still used this method to tempt him. What was even more painful was that he was tempted, and had the urge to go all out and increase his agility. Here it comes again. Another monster spawned. Gu Fei yelled and attacked. This time, his luck was better than before. He used enchantments more frequently, and the monsters were even sharper. Brother Yu forcefully restrained himself. "Fuck, that's too awesome. Did you succeed?" At this time, a voice sounded. Gu Fei and Brother Yu turned around to look. The kind-hearted player had already finished his meal, and just happened to witness Gu Fei's last 2 demonstrations. This time, it was a genuine demonstration of efficiency, and even a layman could recognize it. "Yeah." Gu Fei nodded. "How did you do it?" the player asked. "When I spawn monsters, I'll show you." Gu Fei laughed. He didn't treat his skill as a treasure at all. But the player was extremely excited. He felt like he was the main character in a YY novel. He only did something insignificant, but in exchange, he received generous rewards from the hero, who was about to teach him an unparalleled godly skill. The monster spawned very quickly. This time, Gu Fei switched to the broken sword in order to make it easier for others to see. Moreover, the damage he dealt was relatively light. As a result, when he killed the monster, the word efficiency disappeared with the wind. The player didn't understand. "Why does it seem like I did it on purpose to let you see it clearly?" Gu Fei said. "Huh." At this time, another monster spawned. Gu Fei quickly switched to a night streamer, and turned around with dual flame flash. 2 streaks of flame slashed onto the monster's body, killing it on the spot. Gu Fei put away his equipment and said to the dumbfounded player, "Look, you won't be able to see anything like this." Chapter 597. The dark purple longsword, the black mage robe, and the dual flame flash that could instantly kill without blinking. In an instant, Gu Fei's image was completely in line with the legend. The player's trembling right hand pointed at Gu Fei for a while, and then moved back to cover his mouth as he retreated a few steps. "You're Qianli drunk?" This person finally squeezed out this sentence from his throat. "You know me?" Gu Fei was flabbergasted. "It's over, I'm going to die." This was the only thought left in this person's mind, because he realized that he was trying to take back the leveling area from the parallel world's PK record holder, King of Killers Qianli Drunk. I still have something to do. Can I leave first?" This person said. Gu Fei could see that this player's attitude had changed greatly, as if he was avoiding him. The person involved couldn't see clearly, so Gu Fei didn't know that he was so scary in the eyes of some people. Brother, you've misunderstood." Brother Yu understood what was going on, and quickly came out to smooth things over. "HM?" I'll lend you a few monsters to familiarize yourself with. We'll leave immediately. Brother Yu thought for a while, but couldn't think of a suitable solution. You guys do as you please. This player didn't dare to refuse. Show me 2 more times. Brother Yu said to Gu Fei. Gu Fei switched to the tattered one-handed sword, and at the same time, removed the enchantment, striving to perform clearly. As the monsters respawned, Gu Fei killed another 2 monsters. Brother Yu took out a small notebook and quickly recorded some key details that he might have overlooked or forgotten. Then, he closed his eyes and reviewed it twice. After confirming that there weren't any problems, he opened his eyes and was about to call Gu Fei to leave, but he discovered that a crowd had formed once again. The players who had left earlier would still glance over at Gu Fei from time to time as they leveled up. They wanted to see if Gu Fei would have any exciting performances. Although what they wanted to see didn't happen, Gu Fei's 2 attempts to tempt Brother Yu fell into the eyes of many. His astonishing efficiency in killing monsters immediately attracted a lot of attention, and many people started moving towards him. After that, he used double flame flash. These players weren't that close, so they couldn't see it as clearly as that player. They just thought that it was a more efficient way of killing. After that, Gu Fei demonstrated twice in a leisurely manner. The players who had witnessed Gu Fei's previous 2 efficient kills already understood that Gu Fei had deliberately slowed down to demonstrate to the 2 fellows beside him. An expert. Today, he had finally seen a living expert. The players were very excited. There were often some popular playstyles in the game. Even though everyone used them, very few people knew who created them. This type of mountain creator was an expert that was like a god in everyone's eyes. And now, such an expert had appeared in front of them. The admiration of the players was like a torrential river that flowed endlessly. There were even some players who noticed that Gu Fei was only a mage, so his damage output was definitely limited. If it was them, their higher damage output would definitely be even more frightening. By then, their leveling speed would be double or even triple what it was now. 7th Master. Top 10. Top 5. Number 1 Expert. One dazzling title after another seemed to be waving at them. Many people started daydreaming until they realized that someone was already running towards Gu Fei. Only then did they remember that they still hadn't learned this efficient playstyle. Brother. Brother. Big brother. Brother. The only thing they didn't do was call him Dad. What? Gu Fei was also scared. Before, everyone was just watching, but this time, these guys weren't just watching, they seemed to be moving closer to him. What did you do just now? A player spoke with a northeastern accent, speaking on behalf of the masses. Gu Fei smiled and asked, "You want to learn?" "Yeah." "You're a warrior, right?" Gu Fei looked at him. That person nodded. "Did you add agility?" "Agility?" That person was startled. Warriors adding agility. He didn't dare say that there wasn't any, but it definitely wasn't a normal thought process. For this playstyle, classes that don't have agility modifiers have to add at least 8 levels of agility. You're a warrior, so you can calculate how much you need. Gu Fei said. This person was startled. Some playstyles had stat requirements for the character. This wasn't strange, but most playstyles that required agility were kiting. This person was clearly a close combat style, yet he also required agility. This was extremely rare. This person was startled and asked, "Brother, you added agility too? How much did you add?" He could tell that Gu Fei was a mage. All agility. Gu Fei smiled. All agility mage. Everyone was shocked. Then, black robe, super expert, legendary, Qianli get drunk? There were quite a few players who had paid attention to the discussion about Gu Fei. At this moment, quite a few people called out his name. You know me again? Gu Fei was still surprised. Brother Yu couldn't help but smile bitterly. With one look, it was obvious that Gu Fei didn't go on the forums. He actually didn't know how popular his name was in the forums right now. He belonged to the type of super powerful character who would immediately disappear after someone posted a thread bragging about how awesome he was and the reply, "If you have the guts, challenge me to 1,000 miles and get drunk." Brother, you're my idol. Several mages squeezed out of the crowd and fought to call Gu Fei brother. Because of Gu Fei's existence, mages now all felt that they were a magnificent existence, a cut above others. Cough. Gu Fei was embarrassed. He didn't think that there would be such a thing. The crowd was in chaos. There were only a few people like the guy who was scared to the point that his legs went soft when he heard Qianli get drunk's name. Most people were very curious about this expert. Now that they heard that he was right in front of them, they all wanted to come over and see his true appearance. Wow, is this the legendary night streamer? Someone looked at the level 22 broken one-handed sword in Gu Fei's hands and said in admiration. Damn, what do you know? That sword was sold a few days ago. Do you know how much it was? 20,000 gold coins. Someone said. There was a hubbub of discussion, and Gu Fei, the protagonist, couldn't even get a word in. Brother Wang Yu was smart enough to hide in a corner in such a big situation. He had no intention of coming out to help them out. Brother, you said that you need agility to fight. Is that true? Someone finally brought the topic back to the original topic. Yeah, mages and knights need to have at least level 8 agility. The more the safer. For other classes, you need to use a sword. Gu Fei said. Daggers don't work? A thief asked. If the dagger isn't long enough, there will be some rounds where I won't be able to attack. It'll be a waste of opportunities and the efficiency won't be achieved. Gu Fei said. Everyone was startled. Then they all said, Can you teach us? No matter if they didn't add agility or if their weapons didn't match, they all had the same thought. Learn it first and then try it out. If it really doesn't work, then we'll talk about other things. Sure. Gu Fei happily agreed. Immediately, there was a round of applause. Many players invited Gu Fei to their leveling spots. They all said that their leveling spots had enough monsters and good attitudes. They were the best leveling companions. No need to be so polite. It's all the same. Gu Fei laughed. As a result, everyone immediately dealt with them on the spot, leaving a large empty space. Some people took the initiative to pull the monsters. In an instant, 7 or 8 monsters were pulled back from all directions. There's no need for so many. One is enough. Gu Fei wiped his sweat. Everyone acted one after another and immediately killed all of them. Only one was left for Gu Fei to push into the circle. Gu Fei rolled up his sleeves and announced, In order for everyone to see clearly, I will try to slow down the pace and lower the damage. Everyone nodded. At this time, Brother Yu was curled up under a big tree outside the circle and yawned. In his heart, he felt that Qianli was really a kind person. In this kind of situation, even if it was someone like the Sword Demon, who was also very kind, they might not have this kind of patience. In the circle, Gu Fei slowly demonstrated and asked everyone, Do you remember it? No one answered. After all, this was something that everyone really wanted to learn. They were afraid that they wouldn't be able to do it. They definitely wouldn't pretend to know when they didn't. So even if they had a trace of doubt, they wouldn't admit that they already knew it. Moreover, this move wasn't that simple. They wouldn't be able to remember it after seeing it once. Gu Fei also knew that most people didn't have this talent. He looked around and immediately, there was a player with good eyesight who immediately pulled a small monster from outside the circle and handed it to Gu Fei. The demonstration this time wasn't just a simple demonstration. Gu Fei would often repeat an action while explaining it. He would clearly explain why each move would move in such a way and why each attack would be executed in such a way. In this way, with a basic understanding and memory, the players quickly grasped it. There were many parts that they didn't know before Gu Fei explained, but after he explained, they immediately understood. That's right. This is the simplest and most direct way to fight here. Why didn't I think of it earlier? After this small monster was killed, Gu Fei asked again if they understood it. This time, some people finally shouted that they understood it. This time, those who didn't understand it were anxious. They didn't want to be represented by others and learn it carelessly. After all, this was a solo leveling area. Almost no one came with friends, and they didn't know each other. If they didn't learn it, they wouldn't be able to ask for help. So the players who didn't know it didn't hold back and shouted even louder. Gu Fei had no choice but to pull a small monster to demonstrate and explain. After the demonstration, he asked again if they understood it. Some said yes, but the louder voice was still, no. Gu Fei was puzzled. The people in front of him weren't like his students, who were both rookies and children. On one hand, they were adults with better understanding, and on the other hand, they were people who could solo level 5 above them. They could all be said to be experts. It was impossible that they didn't understand it after such a detailed demonstration and explanation twice. Could it be that they were deliberately messing with me? Gu Fei became suspicious. He looked at the people around him seriously. Immediately, someone pitifully said, "Brother, can you explain it again?" Gu Fei looked at the boy's eager eyes. It didn't seem to be an act. He thought to himself that there might really be people with such poor understanding. Let's demonstrate it again. The small monster was immediately pulled over. At this time, Gu Fei received a message. He opened it and saw that it was Brother Yu. If you continue like this, it won't be over. What's wrong? Gu Fei asked. The people who learned it at the beginning have already come out to practice on their own. In the end, new people keep coming in. How long are you going to teach them? Brother Yu saw it clearly from outside the circle. Many players saw a large group of people and came over to watch out of curiosity. In the end, they discovered that it was a lesson. Some of the people who came later only watched it once or even halfway through. Of course, they didn't know it. So, people kept coming to watch and people kept shouting that they didn't know it. It was really going to be endless. What do we do? Gu Fei asked. I don't know. Brother Yu was happy. He was also looking forward to seeing how Gu Fei was going to escape. He had already prepared the book and pen. This scene was worth recording. Gu Fei scratched his head in distress. He looked around and said, "How many people don't know it? Raise your hand and let me see." Raising their hands formed a forest. Some people even raised 2 hands. It's the last time. Gu Fei said, "Okay." Of course, everyone shouted. They didn't care about the life and death of those who came later. Gu Fei nodded. Immediately, someone pushed the small monsters in. Gu Fei dealt damage, pulled aggro, demonstrated, and explained. It began again. Outside the circle, Brother Yu continued to laugh. He was very far away. He couldn't see Gu Fei's performance, but he could hear Gu Fei's voice. At this time, he saw many players running from all directions. He knew that the people who agreed to Gu Fei's last time wouldn't bother him. This was because the ones that bothered him were all newbies. After another round of demonstration, Gu Fei wiped the sweat off his forehead. Without saying anything more, he started to walk away. In the end, another pitiful guy jumped out. "Big brother, can you demonstrate again?" "Didn't you say it was the last time?" Gu Fei said. "When did you say it?" "We don't know. We just came." This person said and looked at the people around him. "That's right. We just came. Show it again." Many people begged. Gu Fei adhered to his principles when it came to big issues. He wouldn't be moved by force or persuasion. However, when it came to small matters like this, he was open to persuasion but not coercion. After being begged by a bunch of people, his heart softened. He sighed, "I'll show it again. You guys can leave after you know it. There are also people like you who just came and don't know it. When will I stop?" "Then wait. There won't be any more people coming." These people actually didn't care if others knew it or not. However, now that Gu Fei said this, in order to not cause trouble for this expert, they were willing to make any sacrifices. This kind of studious spirit was really admirable. Thus, the circle of people began to wait. Gu Fei had already played for the entire afternoon. He felt a bit tired and immediately sat down on the ground. At this time, many players saw that there were so many people in the circle. They were curious and went in to take a look. In the end, there was a black-clothed mage sitting in the circle. The people in the circle didn't say anything. They were wondering what kind of performance art this was. When they asked the people around him, they all raised their fingers to signal him to be quiet. Everyone realized that the hero seemed to want to rest and didn't dare to make a sound. Those who didn't understand the situation couldn't bear to leave. Thus, the circle became bigger and bigger. In the end, Brother Yu, who was hiding under the tree, was surrounded by people. At first, the people in the circle wanted to look back to see if there would be no more people coming. In the end, they were shocked. There were so many people behind them that they couldn't see what was happening outside the circle. You really are a man. At this time, Brother Yu was squeezed in the sea of people and privately messaged Gu Fei. The players were squeezed like this. Gu Fei, who was in the middle of the circle, enjoyed a large empty space. At this time, he stood up and looked around. Apart from people, he couldn't see anything. He nodded and said, "There are quite a lot of people here. I'm very pleased. Then, can anyone tell me where you guys pushed the monsters to?" When the players heard this, they broke into a sweat. The wilderness camp had been completely taken over by a large number of players. The bonfire patrols who tried to fight for positions with the players were completely wiped out. Because it was completely realistic, it was impossible for there to be any transmigration. At this time, the place was so full of people, and the spawn point of the monsters would automatically adjust. They couldn't possibly overlap with the players, right? Thus, the order of the wilderness camp had been completely destroyed. Without monsters, there was no way to start the demonstration. The players in the circle immediately became anxious and shouted to the people outside the circle, "Get a monster in here." Many players outside the circle didn't know what was happening. They just wanted to join in the fun and occupied a place here. When they heard the shouting, they were completely puzzled. More people shouted back, "What monster? What are you doing?" Inside and outside the circle, it suddenly became noisy again. "Everyone quiet, everyone quiet." Gu Fei shouted. Obviously, one person's voice couldn't suppress the crowd. After shouting a few more words, someone finally started to help Gu Fei shout. In the end, all the players shouted together, "Quiet, quiet." The scene was extremely strange. But after shouting "quiet" in unison, it finally quieted down. Gu Fei cleared his throat and asked loudly, "Can the players outside the circle see it?" "Can't." They answered in unison. Gu Fei scratched his head. If they couldn't see it, he would have wasted his efforts again. Looking around, he suddenly noticed a strange rock with a unique design not far away. It was several meters tall and was simply a perfect natural podium. He immediately pointed at it and said, "Everyone, go under that rock." The stone was very conspicuous in the wilderness camp. It was a landmark of the area. Its code was 9527, named after its longitude. A group of players responded to Gu Fei's call and rushed over there. Gu Fei walked unhurriedly in the crowd. The running players didn't dare to push him. They hurriedly took a detour when they saw this great immortal. Gu Fei was like a whirlpool in a raging river. He was very spacious. Brother Yu, who was squeezed by the crowd, was extremely jealous. The players quickly gathered under 9527's giant stone. A wide path was opened for Gu Fei. Gu Fei was like a Hollywood superstar walking on a red carpet. He dragged his black robe and walked slowly to the foot of the giant stone. Suddenly, he raised his hand and disappeared. Everyone was surprised, but someone realized that Gu Fei was already standing on the giant stone. Applause sounded and thunderous cheers were mixed with more than half of the players asking, "What is he doing?" "You'll know when you see." Those who knew were too lazy to explain. "Get a small monster up here," Gu Fei said. Small monsters were naturally plentiful, but this giant stone was so tall that most players would have to climb for a long time. Luring a small monster up was easier said than done. Gu Fei saw that these people were at a loss and reminded them, "Find a Grandmaster of Combat and throw him up here." Everyone came to a realization and looked to see if the person beside them was a Grandmaster of Combat. So the Grandmasters of Combat stepped out and went to capture the small monsters. Gu Fei looked at the time. Dinner had been delayed for a long time. The students' friends list was already lit up. Teacher, where are you? Why aren't you here yet?" The students' messages had already arrived. Gu Fei smiled bitterly and replied, "Your teacher is going to be famous." Chapter 598. Teacher, where are you? The students did not understand why Gu Fei was so popular, so they quickly asked him. Wilderness camp. Don't come over. It's dangerous, Gu Fei said. After all, this was a level 45 training area. It was too dangerous for the low-leveled kids, and Gu Fei had no time to take care of them. Then what are we going to do? The students were still kids, after all. Without Gu Fei, who had been giving them advice for the past few days, they were suddenly not used to it. For a moment, they did not know what to do. Go train in the training area. Teacher can come over when he's free, Gu Fei replied. The students settled down just like that. The players under the 95-27 boulder opened up a path for the Grandmasters of Combat. A few Grandmasters of Combat led the monsters back and began to modestly give way. You first. You first. You first. Gu Fei stood on the boulder and said, just throw one up. In the end, everyone unanimously recommended the Grandmaster of Combat at the front of the line. Because the space was narrow, there was no place for him to run. He was almost killed by the monster's claws, so he did not hold back. He twisted his body, pinched the monster's shoulder, and threw it. Everyone's eyes followed the monster as it flew, and then followed it back. This player hugged his body and threw it straight up and down. A bunch of people looked down on him, and he was embarrassed. He quickly adjusted his posture and threw it again. This time, the throw was perfect. The monster flew in a beautiful arc and fell toward Gu Fei's feet. Gu Fei already had his sword in hand and was ready to attack. With a flash of white light, the monster died. Gu Fei smiled bitterly. Be gentle, brother. I've lost all my HP from your throwing. How am I supposed to fight? The Grandmasters of Combat realized that this was not the time to show off the strength of their equipment, so they all took off the equipment that increased their damage. They were all plain, and many of them had no choice but to bare their arms, revealing their abdominal muscles. It could not be helped. Figures were based on reality. Many people only found such abdominal muscles in their entire lives. Another Grandmaster of Combat shouted loudly, exerting strength in his arms. The small monster was lifted up by him, and with a smack, it was smashed into a rock. The other players gave him the middle finger, and even Gu Fei was shaking his head. Then the third, the fourth, the fifth. Gu Fei almost fell asleep. There were very few Grandmasters of Combat players in the first place, and those who could reach level 40 were even fewer. Those who could solo level 5 above them were even rarer. Therefore, in such a large number of players, the existence of Grandmasters of Combat was like a small boat. Unfortunately, there were only a few of them, and they were so disappointing. They couldn't even deal with such a small matter after so long. 80% of the time, they would just smash the mobs into a rock. The Grandmasters of Combat were also troubled. They had never practiced this kind of work before. It was just a giant rock, not a platform. The surface of the rock was slippery, slanted, and potholes. It was not something that could be casually thrown. It had to be thrown in the right position. The Grandmasters of Combat standing under the giant rock could not see this position. They could only look at Gu Fei's position and follow their instincts. Unfortunately, everyone's instincts were not accurate, and after struggling for a long time, none of them succeeded. The eyes of the players followed the flying mobs and flickered, constantly sighing with regret. Gu Fei looked at them and felt that he did not know when these guys would be able to throw the mobs up. He simply opened his friends list and searched for Encyclopedic Strategist. Where are you? Wandering around. Encyclopedic Strategist was trying to do business. He modestly called it wandering around. Don't wander around. Come to the wilderness camp and help, Gu Fei said. Encyclopedic Strategist's spirit was lifted. When Gu Fei asked for help, it was usually business. The last time he called him over, there was still no news. Encyclopedic Strategist did not know what to do. Therefore, he did not ask much and immediately rushed to the wilderness camp, asking where Gu Fei was. There's a huge rock right there. When Encyclopedic Strategist arrived at the wilderness camp, he immediately saw the huge rock 95-27 and a black mass of people. We're surrounded. Encyclopedic Strategist was excited. There were so many people, how much money could he earn by killing one? When he got closer, he realized that Gu Fei was sitting on top of the huge rock calmly. He did not look like he was trapped at all, and there were mobs around the huge rock from time to time. It was quite a spectacular scene. Encyclopedic Strategist squeezed in with all his might. The players who were being squeezed turned around and saw that it was a Grandmaster of Combat, so they immediately gave way. It had been proven that the Grandmasters of Combat inside could not bear such a heavy burden, and none of them had good character. After trying for so long, none of them managed to get through. It was really enough. The arrival of Encyclopedic Strategist made everyone feel like their savior had arrived, even though they had no idea who he was. Gu Fei stood high and could see far. He had already seen Encyclopedic Strategist coming over and waved at him in the crowd. Encyclopedic Strategist also waved at him as he squeezed in. "Throw one of the mobs up." Gu Fei pointed at the circle of mobs around the huge rock. They were all caught by the players and were being kept here for the Grandmasters of Combat to practice with. Encyclopedic Strategist went forward to catch it, but Gu Fei reminded him again, "Be gentle, just throw it up." The lower the health cost, the better. Encyclopedic Strategist was stunned, but he quickly removed his equipment and went forward to pinch the mob. With a wave of his arm, the mob moved up and down, but it landed right next to Gu Fei's feet. Thunderous applause. The applause was baffling to Encyclopedic Strategist. After a moment of confusion, he covered the megaphone with his hand and placed it in front of his mouth, shouting at Gu Fei, who was on the rock, "Why did you call me here?" "It's fine now." Gu Fei also shouted. The players were still clapping, but they could not hear it unless they were loud. Perhaps it was because Gu Fei did not cover the megaphone with his hand, but Encyclopedic Strategist still did not hear it even though he shouted loudly. "It's fine now." Gu Fei shouted again. Encyclopedic Strategist heard it clearly this time, and he was petrified. The monster that had fallen at his feet had already begun to move. It crawled up and was about to find its aggro target. Gu Fei hurriedly stabbed it several times. The monster hadn't taken much damage before, so its aggro wasn't high either. In an instant, Gu Fei had stolen its aggro. At this time, many of the players surrounding the boulder had arrived later. They didn't know what Gu Fei was trying to do because the genius hadn't left yet. At this time, Gu Fei quickly pulled the aggro. Many of the warriors nodded their heads. This mage was a good MT. After thinking about it, they were confused. Was there a mage that could be MT? Next was the official teaching performance. As usual, Gu Fei explained while fighting the mob, but some players who did not know what was going on were still muttering. The crowd was buzzing. Many people could only see Gu Fei's mouth moving, but they could not hear his voice. There was no end to the scolding. The scene was chaotic for a while, but when no one came out to maintain order, it gradually became quiet. Everyone's eyes were finally attracted by Gu Fei. At this moment, Gu Fei was not giving a lecture. Instead, he showed off a set of fast sword moves that were very pleasing to the eye, immediately grabbing everyone's attention. Just when everyone was holding their breath, Gu Fei cleared his throat. "It's quiet now. It's officially starting. From the beginning, one move at a time, demonstration, explanation." At this moment, it was the most crowded day in the wilderness camp's history, and also the quietest day in the wilderness camp's history. The sound of the wind, the sound of the sword, and Gu Fei's explanation. Everything was done with facts. There was no need for a special explanation. The people who came later quickly realized what they were witnessing. They opened their mouths wide and stared. After all, this little monster had wasted a lot of its HP on Gu Fei's sword practice. It was not enough at this time, and it died heroically in the middle of the lesson. Gu Fei looked up and found 100 lives Jingluan, indicating for him to get another little monster. The little monsters that were originally kept by the boulder were all cleaned up. The players hurriedly went outside the circle to find the little monsters. At this time, everyone knew the meaning of what they were doing. Everything was carried out in an orderly manner. The little monster was lured to 100 lives Jingluan, who grabbed it and threw it up. Gu Fei caught it, pulled the aggro, and explained. After this small monster was taken care of, Gu Fei didn't ask any more questions. He signaled for another one, and then helped everyone to complete the task once more. He sheathed his long sword and said, "All right, now everyone should understand, right?" Nods came one after another. Gu Fei, who was standing on a high place, looked down as if there was a wave in the crowd. Many of my friends came later. There are two important points that I mentioned before that you might not know. First, there are no agility modifier classes. Agility must be at least level 8 or above. The more, the easier it is to control. Classes with modifiers can convert according to their modifiers. Second, the length of the weapon used must be the length of a one-handed sword, or else it will not be efficient. This was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. If they strictly followed Gu Fei's requirements, all professional players would be eliminated. Classes like rogues, archers, and grandmasters of combat who had no worries about agility would not be qualified for the length of their weapons. On the other hand, warriors, knights, or mages and priests who could use swords, or mages and priests whose weapons were longer than one-handed swords might not meet the agility requirement. In this way, Gu Fei's fighting style was laid out, but no one could use it. Those who were there before were already aware of this requirement, so they had the thought of learning it first. However, those who came later were somewhat displeased. They had followed him for so long in a muddle-headed manner, wasting their time and feelings. Finally, when the cooked duck was served on the table, they realized that their chopsticks were too short to reach it. How could they be happy about this? Therefore, a group of people started to make a fuss again. Some begged, some cried, and some shouted. In any case, they all hoped that Gu Fei could help them solve the problem of their chopsticks being short. Fortunately, no one threatened Roland with the advantage in numbers. Firstly, there were many people, but they did not know each other. Secondly, everyone already knew who this hero was. Before Gu Fei could answer, Encyclopedic Strategist jumped up and used a swallow slash on a boulder. He used his hands and feet to climb up and gave Gu Fei a thumbs up. How could you think of such a wonderful way to earn money? What's wrong with your brain? I'm completely convinced by you. What did you say? Gu Fei was surprised. On the other hand, Encyclopedic Strategist had already opened his arms and faced the players. He said loudly, "Everyone, please be quiet." No one knew who this Grandmaster of Combat was, but some of them recognized that he was the one who threw the monsters onto the boulder. Furthermore, he had jumped up the boulder in just 2 or 3 moves. No one present could do that, so everyone quietened down to listen to what this expert had to say. After the demonstration just now, I believe everyone is clear that using this fighting style to fight monsters will increase the efficiency by at least 2 to 3 times. Although I know that everyone here may not be able to use it due to limited conditions, don't panic. We are about to introduce a more targeted fighting style. It will be tailored to your class, attributes, and target monsters. As for each style, Encyclopedic Strategist paused at this point, tilted his head, and whispered to Gu Fei, "How much is appropriate?" Gu Fei was dumbfounded. He was already in a daze. Seeing that he did not respond, and that the players below were still waiting for him to continue, Encyclopedic Strategist had to continue. He raised a finger, thought for a moment, and suddenly swung it down forcefully. He pointed at the player standing closest to the boulder and said, "Each style will only cost you 99 gold coins." Well, that's too cheap. It's not even 100 gold coins. Brothers and sisters, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and order it. Pick up the pen and paper in your hand, and write down your class, attributes, and weapon. This is a style tailored for you, an exclusive style developed by the Parallel World's #1 assassin, Qianli. It will be taught on the spot, and it's guaranteed that you will master it. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and hurry up. Encyclopedic Strategist ended his generous speech. Gu Fei was so shocked that he did not know what to say. The crowd below was also silent. Just as Gu Fei was about to kick the guy off the boulder, a player suddenly raised his arm and shouted, "I'll sign up." With one person taking the lead, there was a huge response. Countless hands were raised in an instant, and everyone shouted, "I'll sign up." This scene made Encyclopedic Strategist burst with joy. He continued to shout from a high place, "Everyone, don't argue, don't argue. Listen to me clearly. After shouting for a long time, the crowd temporarily calmed down, but the buzzing of whispers did not stop. It was obvious that the players were overwhelmed with emotions and could not calm down so easily. Everyone listened to me. We came in a hurry today, so we didn't bring the registration form. So, please take a pen and paper and write down your registration information. The content includes name, class, weapon, and attributes. I'll emphasize one thing about this attribute, which is dexterity. You might know from the drunken words of our spokesperson, Qianli, that our style is closely related to dexterity, so you must understand everyone's dexterity to find the most suitable method for you. Alright, that's all I have to say. As for the completed registration form, you can hand it to me now. You can contact me through email in the future. You can contact Qianli or me. Oh, by the way, I haven't introduced myself. My ID is Encyclopedic Strategist. Encyclopedic Strategist said a lot more. Encyclopedic Strategist. There was a sudden gasp of surprise. The reputation of the 5 strongmen meant that they were only below one person and above tens of thousands. That person was, of course, Qianli, who was behind him. That's right, it's me. It seems that everyone has heard of my name. Don't worry, our principle of doing business is honesty. As long as you hand us your registration form, we will definitely get in touch with you. We don't take any deposits, so you can just bring the money when we organize the on-site teaching. Alright, that's all. Do you have any questions? Encyclopedic Strategist asked. They had seen people selling everything, but it was their first time seeing someone selling this style. Although it felt strange, the efficiency of Gu Fei's style was definitely the real deal. If they could really master it, it would not be expensive to spend the money. As for the rules that Encyclopedic Strategist mentioned, the players did not find anything wrong with it. Hence, they stopped hesitating and took out a pen and paper to write their own registration forms. Most of them chose to hand it over to Encyclopedic Strategist personally. After all, it was a practical feeling that made them feel at ease. Don't worry, everyone. We will categorize your information and contact you as a group. Just check your email from time to time. It's fine even if it's delayed since we won't miss the deadline. Just keep in touch, huh? What about today? Do you have any plans for today? Some of the players could not wait any longer. I'm afraid we can't do it today. After all, we need to prepare and rest. Everyone go back first. We will contact you soon. Don't worry. Encyclopedic Strategist explained patiently. After the players handed over their registration forms, they left full of anticipation. How could they still be in the mood to level up? They all wanted to wait until they had mastered this set of cultivation technique before they could work hard and unrestrained. The wilderness camp, which had always been bustling with people, had really turned into a wilderness in a moment. Some of the players who came to level up without knowing what was going on found out that the place had suddenly become barren and sparsely populated. For a moment, they did not know what was going on. Encyclopedic Strategist carried a huge stack of registration forms and stuffed them into his pocket. He looked up and saw that Gu Fei was still standing on a boulder in an immortal pose. Encyclopedic Strategist squinted his eyes against the sunlight. After confirming that it was still a living thing, he said, "That's awesome. As expected of a genius. No wonder the Gu family's business is doing so well. I see that everyone in your family is also good at doing business. Awesome. I made a rough estimate just now. There are about 1,000 people who have received their registration forms, and some of them have probably gone to their mailboxes. That's 99 gold coins per person. There are more than 1,000 people, so maybe there are 2,000. This is too much. How are we going to split it?" Encyclopedic Strategist was so happy that he almost fainted. Gu Fei took a deep breath and looked down at Encyclopedic Strategist. "I think you're the genius." Gu Fei did not expect Encyclopedic Strategist to be so quick-witted when it came to making money. Judging from the response of the crowd, this business was definitely going to have a bright future. But the problem was that Encyclopedic Strategist was too arrogant. Gu Fei's students asked him 6 questions a day, but Encyclopedic Strategist collected 2,000 questions in one go. How was he going to live? When Gu Fei jumped off the boulder, he had the urge to cut him down with his sword. Brother Yu, who was watching the scene with his mouth agape, ran over excitedly and said incoherently, "Awesome, too awesome." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.